Welcome to Paulogia Live, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians live here from my studio, Nova Scotia, Canada. And tonight, we are doing something that I promised I might do in my last video if there was enough interest, and there was enough interest, but I couldn't do it alone. So I brought along some guests. Joining me today, we have Dapper Dino and AronRa, whom everyone should know.
Hello.
Both people, because worlds are colliding tonight, gentlemen, because I discovered that Answers in Genesis, whom we all deal with on a regular basis, reviewed Godzilla. And Godzilla is a thing that I have loved, but my love of Godzilla pales in comparison to you two. And so there was no finer trio to get together for Answers in Genesis and Godzilla than you two. So I think everyone knows that you guys run. Let me get a different view here. That you guys have your creation fighters extraordinaire, where I am a mere amateur on that front. And so that I think everyone knows. But give us your short version of your interaction with Godzilla, and we're going to start with Dapper because I think Aron's is going to be longer. So Dapper, tell us about you and Godzilla.
All right, so I've been a Godzilla fan for a very long time, basically since I was a kid, and come on cable every once in a while. And I've at this point seen every Godzilla movie at least twice, most of them more than that. I've seen Godzilla Singular Point. I usually can name off pretty much anything that happened in any of the movies. I'm aware of a lot of the background production things. Like, for instance, I can tell you why Rodan looks like what he does look like in King of the Monsters in regards to Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, things like that. I'm just a really big fan. I'm planning to go see Godzilla -1 in theaters, like hopefully opening day coming up here. So, yeah.
And Aron, your Godzilla love goes back very deep. Tell us a bit about that.
Godzilla was my hero when I was a child. I would get, there was a magazine called the TV Guide that you used to get once a week, and it would tell you all the shows that are on schedule for that week. And I would pour through the TV Guide looking for kaiju movies and Godzilla movies in particular to make sure that I didn't miss any. So, I've been a little frustrated with the inconsistencies of the movies. I was a little upset at there's some things that they did right in G54, which of course the original Godzilla, the Japanese release. When they did the American adaptation with Raymond Burr, there was some things that they did right about that too, which I think were really interesting. When the movie opens and you hear Raymond Burr's voice doing the narration of the devastation, because they start toward the end of the movie to explain, look at this horrible thing that happened, and now we'll go back to the backstory to see how we got here. It was very much like Oppenheimer's speech about Krishna, now I am become death. And they were so similar. So in one of the advertisements for Godzilla 2014, they did the Oppenheimer thing because it was the closest they had to the narration of the of Raymond Burr's thing from 1996, and I really liked that. I liked Godzilla for those two movies, which are basically the same one. Godzilla is a force of nature, yes, but it's also a monster. This is something that is terrifying. It was frightening about all these things that we didn't understand. It was something that was indomitable, and it had this ability that of course, you can have this massive thing, just like with sharks. You have this massive thing that could be very close to you and you can't see it because it's underwater. Even when you're in the water and you're looking through the murky abyss, you can't see what horrible monstrosity may have already tracked you. So this is what makes sharks so terrifying. Godzilla has that same ability. But when he comes on land in those first movies, he comes on land during a tropical storm at night. So he's using the lightning and the thunder and all the torrential rain and all that to cloak his massive existence while he continues to stomp shit that people are blaming on a hurricane. I thought that's amazing. Why don't we have any of the modern movies do that? Instead, the Godzilla was reduced largely to a reptilian version of the Cookie Monster.
Mm.
And except in the 70s when he also learned Kung Fu, which was, again, an unfortunate direction.
I think we're going to get to some of that in the Answers in Genesis thing. All right, so Aron is...
poke at some of the 70s Godzilla in that.
That's right. And one of the ways I was introduced to Godzilla when I was a kid, a Mennonite kid growing up with limited TV and movie exposure, was there was a Godzilla cartoon.
And, the Hanna-Barbera one?
Or and it had Godzuki. the little version. Anyway, but that made me seek out. I would then like Aron with it. I didn't have TV guide access because we didn't do that, but there was TV listings in the newspaper, and I would wait till Godzilla would be on late at night, and then try and sneak downstairs and watch.
Nice.
I loved them. All right, so I recently learned. Well, I knew for a while that Answers in Genesis has a paid streaming service called Answers TV, which is their version of Netflix.
Of course they do.
And in my mind, I'm like, I wonder what kind of stuff is going on over there when there's no one watching The Watchmen over there, right? Because it's who's going to pay money every month to see what kind of garbage they're selling internally.
Paul is.
Well, I am, of course. And it turns out on there, they've got a movie review show. And that's, those of you who know me a little bit know that I worked in the film industry for quite a while, and this is longtime love of film. So this was the whole thing.
Oh, have you worked on any franchises I've heard of?
Well, the one with the lightsabers.
Oh, okay.
One. Yeah.
The laser swords. Got it.
Yeah, the laser swords. Yeah, that one. Anyhow, so I am looking at this, and I see the one for Godzilla. That was one that immediately stood out to me. They've got 2 seasons so far. And anyway, I thought the Godzilla one stood out. I thought we should review it and see whether or not the audience enjoys us reviewing what Answers in Genesis says about these movies. So we're going to try that tonight. It's going to be very casual. We're going to just interrupt.
Are we working with a live audience tonight?
Yes.
We have a live audience. In fact, we have 2 super chats already. We have a member message from The Hollywood Sign is Proof of the Nephilim, who says Dapper is the basis of the kaiju myths. Could be.
Yeah, it's true.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Vishanti, friend of the channel, saying scree whacked. And the whacked, if you're on my other show, it creates some weird icons that bounce around the show, which we don't have in the StreamYard thing, but it'll be fun anyhow.
By the way, Skreonk is how comic books portray the roar of Godzilla.
Skreonk. Okay, I haven't read the books. There we go.
I love that. I saw a documentary on how because I watched this kind of stuff because I was such a huge Godzilla nerd. I was all about herpetology and what is Godzilla's the ultimate herpetological dream, right?
Oh yeah.
When they talk about how they made Godzilla's roar, it was so fucking metal. First of all, when you go to Toho Studios where they invented this character, there's this iron gate that you have to open to get in, and when you have to manually open this gate, to let vehicles in or whatever, it makes a perilously similar noise. The gate does. It's just suspicious. So that the people doing this documentary just opening the gate was like, is this it? Is this what the roar was? And that would have been cool. But the actual explanation was so much more metal because they took a bass violin and played it with a hacksaw.
Oh wow.
That's metal.
That is as much metal as you get. Awesome. The Ronan says $2 says they take issue with Godzilla. Well, we'll see if they may not like the one true God.
Well, he's not a god. Certainly he is. I mean, why don't you have problems with fucking Thor then? Right? And I mean the Marvel Comics universe Thor. Why not? I'm sure they do.
They probably do. They've only done one Marvel movie on their review show so far, and that's a Spider-Man film. So we'll see. I'm anxious to find out actually what problems they've got.
I would have thought that they'd have been complaining immensely about the resemblance between Jehovah and Thanos.
God just snapping everybody out of existence when
And
Well,
I
God
also
showed
like
us-
to use I like to do counter apologetics arguments where when they tell me that I can't prove that God doesn't exist, I say you can't prove that Godzilla doesn't exist. Now where are we? Go ahead.
I love
Prove
it.
there's no Godzilla.
That's
Have you
awesome.
looked everywhere? Have you looked in the bottom of the Marianas Trench?
No, that's where the Meg hangs out. We all know that.
I can carry it a little bit further too. I mean, you can't prove that Darth Vader doesn't exist because then you would have to have explored every galaxy far, far away a long time ago.
Yeah. Plus, I don't even know where Mustafar is, so I don't even know where to start. I hear that's where he lives now.
He lives well. It depends on where in the timeline you're talking about, but now,
Ah.
but yes.
Good point.
But,
Good point.
all right. So the other thing about the Answers TV streaming series I learned was that obviously no one's watching The Watchmen over there. They are just playing huge sections of these movies as part of their show
Mm-hmm.
because Hollywood is unaware that their streaming service exists, so they're just pirating things. YouTube, however, I did a little experiment trying to upload it to YouTube, and it's just like, we're shutting your channel down, all this kind of stuff. So I had to cut out a lot of the places where they showed very lengthy clips, but I think we're all familiar enough with the Godzilla lore that we don't need the clips for context.
Yeah, and if the audience does, I'm sure we can provide the context. Because I mean,
Exactly.
I rewatched the movie earlier today, so I have it fresh in my mind. I'm sure between Aron and I, we probably remember every single scene of every single Godzilla movie.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
I
before we
watched
dive
all
in,
of those ones from the 60s. I watched them over and over
Mhm.
and over. I've seen them so many times.
$2 to evangelize that turtles are the best tetrapod. From Diem, scientist, chemist, auto mechanic wing. Thank you.
Yeah, shoot me a link to the public thing because I'm not seeing it on your channel.
Oh, okay, sure. I will. Oh yeah, unfortunately, we don't see it. You guys don't get to see it on. You know what? I'll work on that I'm just gonna start the show so people aren't bored
Good.
while I do that.
I have the stream up. I'll just put it in the
Oh yeah,
the chat on
our private chat here.
Shitter, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So here
There
we
it
go. This is Answers in Genesis.
You're a gentleman
movie
and a
review
reptile.
show
Thank you.
called Tilt Shift.
Which I actually like that name, by the way.
Well, we'll get to it when they start talking about it. But yeah, I
Okay.
do want to talk about that name.
This isn't your typical movie review show. We're not saying that you should or shouldn't watch the films we review, and we're not detailing all the objectionable material in them. Several websites do that already. Also, the brief clips used for humor, we're not endorsing those shows or actors either. Instead, we're examining the ideas and philosophies found in these movies from a biblical perspective to help you shift your thinking to align with the Bible. Tilt Shift. Real talk about real ideas.
Except
As
that they're
if-
talking about from a biblical perspective, so they've just contradicted themselves.
Yeah, and on top of that, there isn't such a thing as like the biblical perspective, right? They don't have a monopoly on interpreting ancient texts, which they love to claim. And like, oh, well, we say the Bible says what it really says. Well, it's like, well, it's almost certainly not what the authors meant. It's not what most other Christians think it says. So on what grounds do you say this? And they're just like, well, you know, it's how we read the book. Okay, cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Like, even from the internal Christian standpoint, like, they don't have a whole lot of leg to stand on there.
Yes, and I also enjoy that they obviously want to like they cover Harry Potter and they cover like other controversial shows, you know, that Christians wouldn't necessarily find appetizing. So that whole disclaimer at the front is basically to everyone chill out. We're not telling you to watch these movies. We just want to watch them internally and talk about them. Apparently, we have a super chat from David Z. David Z, who is a co-host of another show on this channel called Toast to Toast. And David Z writes, longtime listener, first-time caller. I don't understand how an iguana can breathe fire. Please explain in detail.
Yeah, that's an interesting backstory for Godzilla. It's probably the only thing that the Devlin distortion did that was good was in 1998 bastardization, which we will not dignify. We will call it Zilla, just to show our disrespect. In that movie, that was the opportunity to do Godzilla right. to show real good special effects and real writing. I mean, to show what we could do with this thing, and they gave it to the guys who hated Godzilla to ruin it. And that this was the best moment to do it right, and we gave it to the wrong people, and they fucked it up. So enough about that. But the one thing that they did, or there was maybe two things that they did that was interesting and amusing about that, was that they took Godzilla was not a dinosaur. And in a lot of the previous movies, Godzilla was cast as a dinosaur, even though he was plantigrade and walked upright like we do.
Right.
Now, curiously, lizards do that too. And lizards have more than just the 3 toes. Or Godzilla has like 4 forward-facing toes, and then in some versions he has like a 5th dew claw kind of a thing, or he has the 3 forward-facing toes. Depending on who they. But he has more than 3 because he's got the dew claw going on. But in the old ones, when he was a dinosaur, he had the feet of a lizard. He had the walk of a lizard, the stance of a lizard. He was visibly a lizard. But then the Devlin brothers gave him the legs of a dinosaur and the stance of a dinosaur, and they turned him into a dinosaur that they called a lizard. They said that was an iguana. So totally fucked the taxonomy both ways. Godzilla should have been a lizard to start with. They shouldn't have ever called him a dinosaur. But that it was the 50s. What did they know then?
Sure.
Well,
yep.
we're talking about the very end of the 20th century. What did the Devlins know? What they should have known? Anyway.
Although confusingly, when you look at because every once in a while we get a glimpse of like Godzilla's skeleton, and if you look at the skeleton that you get from like Toho, especially in like the Showa era, he very clearly has the skull of like a cynodont, not necessarily a mammal, but at least a cynodont. And then if you look at the skeletal diagrams that they made for the Monsterverse, he has the skull of some kind of archosaur. So it's all very confused because this is what happens when you have intelligent design. You just stick whatever looks cool from various creatures on. It's almost like it's not the product of evolution, but instead intelligent design. And that's what we should expect if there were intelligent design all over the biological world.
I've made videos about this, that Godzilla is one of many examples that created things, because Godzilla is a created thing, created for the movie industry. And he's been created in different incarnations, which all of them, every one of them violates taxonomy. Mm-hmm. The Zilla 98 thing where he's on dinosaur legs, but he's a lizard, that wouldn't happen. And the Godzilla, the G54 where he's upright and he has lizard legs and everything, but he's called a dinosaur, that's all wrong. And it's not just that, but they have the mammals have the differentiated teeth. Reptiles typically don't, except in the cases like of fangs for serpents and that sort of thing, where you have specialized teeth for certain reasons. You don't have cuspids, bicuspids, molars, and all of this like you do with mammals. But with Godzilla, you've got, for whatever reason, the earlier incarnation has fangs, and that's not even the bigger deal. He has a nose, not just nostrils. He has a nose and external ears. You have to look close to see it, but he has external ears. Yeah. So it's very much like what you're talking about, that he does look like he's a he does look like a cynodont. And there are moments when he looks some aspects are archosaurian, but not really. For the most of my part, it is more on the synapsid side. Like he was never a true reptile. He just looked like one superficially.
Yeah. Maybe what used to be called a mammal-like reptile back before we got our act together with taxonomy.
A therapsid, yes.
Yeah.
Fade to Gray writes, can we have Dapper reenact any of the cutscenes? Well, absolutely. That's an opportunity we should take on board.
Actually, there's a scene actually in Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is the movie that they're reviewing today, where Godzilla comes out of the ocean and breathes some fire up into the sky. And if you come hang out for my Tuesday live streams and you click on it early, I have a trailer in which I rise out of the ocean at night and breathe a Godzilla flame up into the air with the Godzilla roar, with some Akira Ufukube track in the background. So all you have to do to see me reenact a scene from Godzilla is show up early to any of my Tuesday live streams, and it's right there.
I was so happy when I found a guitarist on Patreon who was doing a metal version of the original Godzilla theme.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that I've just always wanted to hear that. That was amazing.
Nice. The governor writes, I'm feeling uneducated. I've never seen a Godzilla film.
Hey, there's no time
Well-
like the present to start.
So
Yeah,
where should
I would
where
go
should,
see
where should you
the
start?
Raymond Burr 1956 Godzilla King of the Monsters. See that one.
There you go.
If you see Gojira, you're not going to get all of the nuance that I was talking about that I loved about the opening prologue, for example, that I thought was so great. Go see that. Don't see any of the other movies. They've never done Godzilla correctly. That's the frustrating thing. They've done it hundreds of times, but they've never done it right.
You feel that's how I feel about Batman. All right. The Ronan writes, evolutionism says a dino can give birth to a Godzilla, but cats never give birth to non-cats. So
Evolution
point.
disproved.
I don't think the Ronan is being entirely serious.
No, I don't think so either.
All right.
Welcome to Tilt Shift. I'm Brian.
And I'm Tim.
This is where we do real talk about real, get a movie reel ideas. All right?
Nice.
We're so excited for season 2. And Tim, you've got a really nice shirt, by the way.
Check it out. Tilt
Look at
Shift.
that.
That's the name of the show.
It is. Imagine that. How'd that happen?
I don't know.
Just random chance, right?
Merchandising.
Of course.
But this episode's all
Whenever the Answers in Genesis needs to make a joke, they just say random chance, like it's a.
Yeah.
That's the one thing they borrowed from Kent Hovind. That's his joke. So.
And I just realized I've got like 3 or 4 really goth Godzilla shirts, and I didn't think to put one of those on.
Man.
Oh well.
Oh,
Also,
well.
I got to say, Tim Chaffee is an absolute giant, and
Yes.
it's not that hard to just get him a chair that fits, and then move. What's his name? Brian Osborne or something.
Brian,
Just move him a little bit closer to the camera. Have a long depth of field so that there's not a lot of focus difference, and then they can look like they're the same size, right? Like if you can make Elijah Wood look like he's 3'6", standing next to like Gandalf or whatever, you
Right.
can make it so that they don't look like Tim Chaffee is a giant spider sitting in a tiny little chair.
maybe
It
that's
does
is
look
the
like
card.
they should have put those chairs one on top of the other before he sat down.
I mean, he looks so uncomfortable. It's like he barely fits in that chair. I don't like Tim Chaffee because he's kind of a weirdo because of the whole young Earth creationist nonsense. But anyway, still, like, the dude deserves a chair that's just gonna fit if he's hosting a show. Come on.
You know that he's now Dr. Tim Chaffee.
Oh, well, is it a
They got
real
him.
doctor?
They bought him a PhD because you can't just have regular people on staff there. So
I
Yeah,
wonder
it's
how
like-
many cereal box tops they had to use to get that.
Yeah, like, is it from a real accredited school, or
no,
is it from
he now has a doctorate of theology from some place that is just gives.
Oh, okay, a doctor of
course.
theology, which is a bit
Yeah.
like having a PhD in Mother Goose.
Sure. Yeah. So Tilt Shift is the name of the show. So Dapper, what were you going to say before I launch in? What were you going to say about the name Tilt Shift?
I just think it's an interesting title because there's that camera effect that you can use for making things look a little like they're miniature or things like that. And I just like that when they're talking about movies, the title of the show is something that you probably wouldn't get unless you actually like movies. So I think what they're trying to do is cater to this sort of film buff crowd. And I just think that's more marketing sophistication than I'm used to from Answers in Genesis. And I just I'm like, you know what, guys, you put some effort into that, and I appreciate that.
Well, it is, but you know what the Tilt Shift effect does, right? It takes scenes that are real,
Yeah, it makes them look fake.
and make them look like they're fake.
Yeah. Which is also kind of what Answers in Genesis.
Right, it's what
yeah.
they do with their science stuff. It's like we're taking real science and we're going to alter your perspective enough so that it's not science anymore. It's now
Often
fairy
by
tale.
just blatantly lying to your face in ways that I know that they know. Like when I'm going to bring up, of course, my nemesis, Andrew Snelling. Like when he points out some Green River Formation fossil and says, "See, this couldn't happen except for a giant flood." And it's like, hey, aren't those Eocene after you think the flood stopped? Okay, Andy. Sure, we get it.
Yeah, I liked comparing. This is just something that I happened across. I was looking up Acantha Stega, Answers in Genesis articles on that, and I found one by Andrew Snelling, and I found one by Garner. I forget his name, Paul Garner. but they were written like 3 or 4 years apart. And what I thought was amusing about that was that one of them was arguing that this can't be a transitional species because its legs were fully designed for walking. Whereas the other one says this can't be a transitional species because the legs are fully designed for swimming and are incapable of supporting the animal's weight out of water. So one of them is saying it's entirely aquatic, the other one's saying it's entirely terrestrial, and that's why it can't be transitional at all.
It's too transitional to be transitional.
And they're arguing with each other unwittingly, taking opposite sides. And so how do you know when a species is transitional? Is when creationists can't agree which side of some arbitrary imaginary line it's 100% on that side, but it's on both sides, and they can't agree with each other.
I mean, famously, you've got creationists who will go back and forth with themselves between different talks to different audiences on which hominins are just 100% human and which ones are just 100% ape with nothing to do with humans. And it's like, yeah, you should at least agree with yourself on this, my guy.
Yeah, so there was Dwayne Gish was one of these that they interviewed for this. They show him this the partial skull, KNMR. I can't remember what the number was. The skull was. They started with Gish, and he said at the time that it was 100%. I think he started with 100% ape. Then they interviewed this other guy, says no, it's 100% human. Then they go to this other evangelical, creationist, famous at the time, who says no, it's 100% human again. So then they're flip flopping, and then they come back to Gish a decade later with the same fossil.
Oh no!
And now, what he said was 100% human. Now he says it's 100% ape.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter to these people. They know they're full of shit. Answers in Genesis scientists clearly know they're full of shit.
My favorite bit is when you can see it, like in Answers News when Georgia Purdom is on, and you can see her get a little uncomfortable when it's very, very obvious that everyone on the panel is misrepresenting whatever they're talking about, and she knows. And she claws them back just a little bit, but not too much, because she also knows that if she actually reports accurately on the article, that ruins the entire thing. And like, I kind of want to talk to Georgia Purdom and like see if I can have like a candid off the record conversation, be like, okay, so this is bullshit. I know this is bullshit. How do you get through an Answers News episode like this? Because it's clearly uncomfortable for you. And the problem is I don't think she's ever going to agree to that conversation. And I couldn't report back if she did, so.
There was another one. You would think that having Garner and Snelling contradict each other the way that they did, that there would be some kind of correction. But of course, they're not going to do that because it's all about make believe. That's their whole agenda. Make believe. Even when you know it's not true, make believe anyway. And David Minton, the anatomist that they used to have, I understand that they have a new paleontologist now, but the old anatomist that they used to have gave this lecture on trying to separate birds from dinosaurs, in which he directly contradicted his own prior articles, where he said that dromaeosaurs, for example, cannot be related to birds for all of these skeletal reasons that he provides. Then he found out that dromaeosaurs were confirmed to have feathers, all of them. Every dromaeosaur in the fossil record now, there's indications that they all had feathers. So what does he do? He gives a presentation where the exact same animal that he previously said cannot be related to birds for all these skeletal differences, he says that they are birds and cannot be related to dinosaurs for the very opposite reason that he previously gave 10 years earlier.
And also, he had commissioned some reconstruction of a dromaeosaur that has a beak, which we know dromaeosaurs didn't have. It has just 3 more or less equal-sized toes, so it doesn't have the digit 2 on the pes hypertrophy. It's just someone, he basically said, hey, I want you to make something about the size of Deinonychus, but just make it a bird. And that's what he put up there. And that's his reconstruction of Deinonychus. It's just a bird. It doesn't have the killing claw. It has a beak. It doesn't have teeth. And it's just like, how... It's just brazen, the level of dishonesty in that reconstruction. And I loved AronRa's series on that with Darren Neisch. And actually, because of that series, because I thought they did such a good job, I didn't plan to cover it. And then I basically got hounded by a bunch of my supporters and like, no, you have to make a series on this. So then I finally did. And in my version, you can see the chat that's on screen for that because it was a live stream. because I'm in the live chat debunking everything live as it was live because I caught it. Because it was in the middle of the pandemic. I'm stuck in my apartment. What else am I going to do?
Brilliant.
That's awesome.
And I'm glad you did, because it takes more than one of us to call this shit out.
Yeah, it was so bad.
All right. Mark Rothenbuehler writes, Godzilla is a kaiju kind. Proof he's on Noah's Ark.
Yeah, that does it. But he was taken on as a baby, remember, because that way he eats less
That's
food.
right. You'd want the small Godzillas.
Yeah.
You'd want the Godzuki and whatever
Actually,
female Godzuki.
I'd take the Godzillasaurus from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. That seemed like a nice, friendly version of Godzilla. It was an herbivore, That was pretty good.
All right, let's see if we can get to the review.
All about Godzilla, King of Monsters.
Yes.
A very
King
fun
of the
movie.
Monsters.
It is rated PG-13 for sequences of monster action violence and destruction and a little bit of language.
I like how they clarify what sort of violence.
Yeah.
There's like fantasy action violence.
This is
and
monster
one is
action violence.
In other words, it's pretty awesome violence.
It's pretty big.
So if you're
I mean, it's not Bible genocide cool. But,
I mean,
you know.
Although I actually do agree with them that it is awesome violence in that it's monster action violence, which is what I come to Godzilla movies for.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I can't disagree with them entirely on this one.
Whether you're talking about CGI kaiju or, rubber suit wrestling, whichever version of that, it really can't compete to slaughtering all the Medianite little boys in front of their mothers and then skewering all their mothers in front of their daughters and then taking the preteen girls as sex slaves.
Yeah, a little bit less awesome on that one.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to recommend a movie based on the Old Testament. They just couldn't.
Although on the bright side, that's an event that almost certainly didn't happen.
Well, I would bet that it was really close to what did happen, a lot closer than a lot of other things in the Bible to what really did happen.
I mean, it wouldn't have been a terribly unusual outcome for a siege in the Iron Age.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that. If there had been there were besieged cities, obviously, in the Iron Age, and that is what tended to happen. In fact, that kind of thing tended to happen into antiquity. So, it's actually a fairly recent thing that we've been like, okay, so maybe we don't need to wipe out the entire population of a city if it resists occupation. Maybe we don't need to do that.
That's treading somewhere I don't want to go tonight, so let's move on.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough.
Godzilla movies and Kong movies, these are what's called the Monsterverse. This is the third film in the Monsterverse franchise.
Right.
There was the Godzilla from 2014, which kind of was a reboot of Godzilla. Then there was the Kong Skull Island. That one was a little gorier, a little more gruesome in many ways. And then this one was Godzilla King of Monsters. There's a fourth one, Godzilla versus Kong. There's a new one coming out, I believe, next year. But this movie, there's a lot actually to talk about. There's a lot of environmentalism, some of the extremism.
Right.
And then there's also, believe it or not, a lot of biblical imagery in this film about Godzilla.
Maybe the most of all the movies we're covering. It's kind of ironic,
It
right?
is ironic.
Really, Godzilla? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Godzilla, obviously this big monster.
I loved Godzilla when I was a kid.
I do too.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, he made land of the set. That's
He's on the
yours.
set. That's actually mine is from a kid, yeah.
But Godzilla and Ghidorah.
Do you have any cool Godzilla models? Either of you?
Oh shit! I'm just sitting under a bunch of them. Let me.
Nice.
I've got this one. I've got this one. I've got this one.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're on the Answers to Genesis set, but not ours. See, one reason they're better than us.
I don't actually have a whole lot of knickknacks of any kind, so unfortunately, no. My shelf knickknacks are pretty much completed by I have a few replica Egyptian artifacts, 2, I think. A couple statues that I bought in Hong Kong, a 1-to-1 Velociraptor skull, and a Lord Draken from the Power Rangers comic book series by Boom Studios helmet. That pretty much exhausts the knickknacks, which actually, I really like that helmet because it's wearable. And so if you look at, I think it was my 10K subscriber special, you can actually see me wearing it in my human suit. I put on my human suit, and then I put the helmet on top of the human suit. It was very stuffy.
Who's the big bad guy in this one? They've come a long way since the first time they met back in the 1960s.
Okay, hold on. So this is not the first time that Godzilla and King Ghidorah met. This is a movie called Invasion of Astro Monster or Monster Zero, depending on which release you're getting this title from. And this is actually a subsequent film to the first time King Ghidorah met Godzilla, which is in The Three-Headed Monster, which is an earlier film in which a princess is possessed by the spirit of a Venusian or something like that. It's very, very confusing. And she predicts all this great calamity, and they find this magnetic, gigantic egg inside of a crater, presumably from having fallen from space, and that hatches into Ghidorah. And then this is actually a sequel to that. It's in the same continuity, but in this one, the aliens from Planet X, which is a planet that is in our solar system in this movie's world, are I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I'll just say this: they are contending with a monster.
Movie from 1967.
We have people in chat who've admitted to not having ever seen a Godzilla movie, so I want them to have the full experience if they decide to go out and see them. But the movie starts out with the idea that these Planet X aliens are contending with a monster that they call Monster Zero, because according to them, they number everything, which, okay, kind of weird, but sure. And so they want to borrow Godzilla from Earth to fight off Monster Zero. And then this is from that battle scene where Godzilla and Ghidorah are fighting on Planet X after Godzilla has been abducted from Earth, but like with the consent of the Earth governments, who apparently they needed that consent because their spaceships. It like many Godzilla plots. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you think about it too much, but it's a fun movie anyway, except for the dancing. So
there is some things I liked about Monster Zero. It was one of my favorite Godzilla movies. I mean, it doesn't compare to the first two, 54 and 56, but I did like Monster Zero for the way that they employed. They took over Godzilla and Rodan and made them do their bidding, but then also that they kind of escape that some way when they do the battle with Monster Zero. You know how Godzilla does that ridiculous dance at the end, or a cheer or whatever the fuck it was, that woohoo that he does. That was I was 11.
That's gonna come up.
I mean, that was fun for me to watch. So that one's not. I mean, it's not the proper Godzilla, but it is. If you're interested in those really campy. Remember that before Star Wars, every science fiction movie was dystopian and creepy. Everybody was afraid of the future. All of the movies about futuristic things were always supposed to be frightening. You couldn't have a pirate space adventure like Star Wars because nobody had ever done that before.
Except Flash Gordon-ish.
Yeah, Flash Gordon was a bit of a combination, right? Because you get this heroic guy going around, but he's going around in a somewhat nightmarish universe controlled by like evil overlords and whatnot.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we have.
Although I have to give credit to Ming the Merciless. He had a wicked mustache.
True.
The Maquette Naturalist, just $2. Thank you so much. We have Gupdo 3. I'm transgender. Am I a transitional fossil? Well, the thing is, you have to be a fossil before you can be a transitional fossil. So I hope that you never become a fossil, and that you're.
I mean, I can think of worse fates for your remains than becoming a fossil.
Well, it depends. Yeah, if you're not, as long as you're not buried alive by mudslide or something.
Yeah.
Or fall in a tar pit. All right. Puffy Cloud writes, maybe we've lost AIG on Godzilla, but we might still be able to convince them of Gamera. Friend to all children, he could be a Jesus allegory. Well, we're going to get to this. Actually, they think that Godzilla is a Jesus allegory, so watch for that if we ever get that far. So turtles give birth to Ninja Turtles as their shelf. So turtles give birth to Ninja Turtles as their shelf exposes. Oh, okay. Yes, that's right.
That's evolution right there.
But that's how they think evolution is. They think it's Pokemon evolution, but they would say, well, they're still turtles.
Yeah, they're still X is always, every time anyone ever says, well, there's still X, what that means is they don't understand how evolution works at a fundamental level. And therefore, like, you need to stop having a conversation about like the evidence for evolution and whatnot. And you need to back up and just talk about like, what is evolution? Like, starting in like middle school biology level with like, okay, so DNA, here's what DNA is, because that's the kind of level of like confusion that we're at. Anytime anyone says, well, it's still a turtle. Yeah. It'll always be a turtle.
Yeah, when you can show them how microevolution works, they want to make a distinction between macro, but they can't make a distinction between macro, and they'll come right out and admit that they fully accept that speciation happens. Get them to understand, okay, so this is how we have one original dog, for example, speciated into all of these different species of dogs, not just different subset of domestic dogs, but different species of dogs as well. You accept it all, and all of this is evolution. Yeah, but that's not real. Well, how is it not real evolution? Because it didn't turn into something else. Yeah, it never does.
It's like there's this law of monophilitism. Is that it? No, that can't be it. Monophily. That's it. That's what that is.
Yes, monophily.
Got it.
The laws of monophily and biodiversity.
Pinworm writes, Mount Rushmore live stream. Thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate everyone hanging out with us tonight. That's awesome. Diem answers in Gajira Wing writes, Godzillasaurus ate watermelons just like T-Rex? Yeah, that's a good question.
So if we mean the Godzillasaurus infant from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, it definitely ate plants. I don't remember specifically if it ate watermelon, but I do believe there were fruit in the enclosure that they kept it in the first part of the movie. So I would go ahead and say that, yes, Godzillasaurus from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla probably would have eaten.
Well, as we all know, watermelons before the floods grew on tall trees.
Yeah, obviously,
as we all know.
It's only because of sin that they grow along the ground.
That's right.
But I also love that they always portray a modern watermelon when we know that just like 3 centuries ago, watermelons looked almost nothing like this.
It's the Ray Comfort problem all over again. Yeah.
Yeah, the banana is perfectly designed by humans. Yep, that's
one of the movies that I saw most often as a kid growing up was the 1969 Son of Godzilla, where instead of Godzillasaurus, it was named Minya, and Minya could talk.
Yeah.
When he shrunk, because Minya could somehow change his size so that he could be human size, where he could have a 10-year-old human friend to talk to. And then sometimes he would grow and he would be something like 100 feet tall, which is only a quarter as tall as his dad was, something like that. Because they said in the original movie, in the Japanese version, they said that Godzilla was 50 meters tall. Or was it 60 meters? I forget.
I believe it originally was 50, and then it has gone up for the most part ever since.
It was 50 meters tall. But in the 1956 adaptation with Raymond Burr, they said that Godzilla is over 400 feet tall. And it took until you get to G14 before Godzilla starts approaching that size.
Yeah.
But when you look at the movies, he's never that big.
Generally speaking, Godzilla is big enough such that the tallest buildings around him are roughly the same size as he is. That's how you can usually tell how big Godzilla is going to be, is look at the city he's going to. How tall are those buildings? Right. He's probably going to be a little bit shorter than the tallest buildings in that city, because they always want him to be proportional to the buildings. And so
he's bigger than most of the buildings until he gets to downtown.
Right. It's the very tallest buildings. And then he's a little bit shorter than those. And so like, well, how big is the tallest building in, like 1950s Tokyo? Probably not much taller than 50 meters. So that's about how tall Godzilla is. And then you get to later ones where, you get to like the Monsterverse, where, there's skyscrapers over 100 meters tall. Well, Godzilla's 100 meters tall now.
Yes.
Steinjarl?
I think it's Steinjarl. I think it's a
Steinjarl. Godzilla, a radioactive monster on the Ark, changing kinds to species. Yeah.
Maybe that's like the secret to the rapid post-flood speciation, is they spent so long with Godzilla, and the radiation just induced so many new mutations,
But God designed all those mutations, because that also has to be so.
Yes, well, God directed the ionizing radiation entering the gonads of all the animals on the Ark to do the right mutations, not the wrong mutations.
Savage Cobra. Savage, what's a Panbo voice? I don't know how to say the name. Savage Cobra. I love what you wrote. AIG and getting the source material wrong. Name a more iconic combo. Indeed. Yes.
By the way,
You
that
always
name
get
is specifically designed to irk me. Is what
I
Panbovicetacea
see.
is? Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we should get. Oh shoot, we got one more snuck in. We need to get back to
Oh, wait,
the
hold on.
thing.
Yeah. When you read
Go
this,
ahead.
I got something else to say.
Okay. Yay! Paul, Dapper, and Aron on Godzilla. What's in the growler tonight, Aron?
I have a local Dallas Fort Worth brew called Cocytus by Martin House. This is at least 12% ABV, although I think the special
Wow.
brew that I have is a little bit higher than that.
Gee. You know where to get all the high ABV beer.
All right. Who wants to see a Godzilla?
Yeah, I
dance?
wanted to comment
Oh,
on
go for it.
when they were talking about the different movies. I'm not sure which one they're reviewing now because it seems like that they were getting into Godzilla King of the Monsters is the wrong name because as Dapper Dinosaur mentioned before, the original movie, that Monster Zero was the sequel of this original movie. They had an original movie that introduced Rodan. Rodan was introduced in his own movie, 1956, but Rodan returns to fight alongside Godzilla and Mothra against Ghidorah. And that movie is the one they remade in, I think, 2016. That's the one they called King of the Monsters, but it's not.
Mhm.
It's not King of the Monsters, is it? Because the 1956 King of the Monsters, Godzilla's a solo act.
Yeah.
So what was the name of the original one where we learned, or they bring back Rodan and they introduce Mothra? What was the name of that movie?
The three-headed Godzilla versus the three-headed monster.
Godzilla versus the three-headed monster. That's the movie they remade, and obviously they went with King of the Monsters because Godzilla versus the three-headed monster would have sounded stupid.
Yeah, that's a title that doesn't really work in like the 2010s.
Yeah, I do like what they did with Rodan though in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like a lot of the way that the complete missed opportunities for the new movies, but I do like Rodan like a lot.
One big thing is the Rodan design in King of the Monsters is actually based on a scrapped design for Rodan from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, in which there was going to be some transition where it becomes Fire Rodan after emerging from a volcano or something like that. And so we had like a whole lot of extra like flame motifs going on, and like the wing membrane was going to be changed. And so they took a lot of that concept art and put it into the Monsterverse, which is why Rodan comes out of the volcano and still has like glowing embers all over his body, and the trailing edge of his wing membranes are smoking and whatnot. And so
he looks like he looks like he was also influenced a little bit by the demon in Fantasia.
Yeah, that's actually I actually hadn't thought about that, but I can see that. And I personally really like the Rodan design from the King of the Monsters legendary film.
Yeah, that was really good. I'll give him full cred on Rodan being badass.
Puffy Cloud writes, I got all my knowledge of prehistory from a Ringo Starr movie. So that seems like a mistake.
Well, then you didn't get knowledge of prehistory at all.
And Mark Bernkoff used member chat to say, I left work early for this, like I do for Toast to Toast AM. Well, welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to give you a reason to leave work. We can all use that.
Always fun.
All right, let's get to some dancing.
I love the sound effects.
Yeah. They have kind of kept Godzilla's.
Oh, it's that
roar
moment.
the same.
Yeah, they're going to show the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty neat.
This is not, though.
Yep, there it is.
Like, my question is why?
Oh, I know why. So at this point, Godzilla. So when it starts out, right, 1954, Godzilla is a serious movie that is an attempt by Japanese filmmakers to talk about the atomic bombings of Japan without running afoul of the U.S. censors who were still in place in Japan, who were saying, no, you can't just talk about the war crimes that the United States committed against you in retaliation to your war crimes, because war crimes for everybody. And so they created this monster. They explicitly connected it to the atomic bombing with things like his skin looking like the charred skin of bomb victims, things like that. And then over time, as things like the rushed sequel, Godzilla Raids Again, comes out, and it becomes a little bit more of a slogfest with a different monster rather than sort of a suspenseful, almost horror movie vibe. And it, over time, started getting more and more of a kid thing. Kids were enjoying Godzilla films more than adults were. And so you can start to see a lot more of this with King Kong versus Godzilla, the original one, the first one is in color. And by the time you get to Godzilla versus Monster Zero or Invasion of Astro Monster, which are the same movie, basically the franchise has at this point just gone into, it's now a kid's thing. It is for kids. They're usually trying to keep it to the point where like the parents who are taking their kids to see these movies aren't going to be like just bored out of their skulls. They're trying to doing kind of like the Disney cartoon thing where it's like there are some jokes and some elements that are there for the adults to enjoy so that they're not just going crazy, but it's primarily a kids thing. And this was the first movie that really solidly put Godzilla into this is a kids franchise territory. And that would be the way it would stay for the rest of the Showa era until the reboot in the Heisei era where we get the was it 84, 80? I don't remember which year, 82?
Yeah, they made a valiant attempt when they brought Raymond Burr back to reprise his original character, Steve Martin, which...
they called him Mr. Martin because they didn't actually have the rights to call him Steve Martin.
But it's funny because they had the priority, right? It's like Mel Brooks said about Hedley Lamar. This was 1856. We could sue her.
Yeah,
that's genius. I love that.
So yeah, that is to answers in Genesis question. Yeah, it's because that there had been a long series of moving the series more and more kid friendly, and you actually see that like with things like Son of Godzilla, where Godzilla and his son are on an island, and Godzilla's son is being bullied by bug monsters, and this is like, what's happening right now? It's like it's Godzilla teaching his son to stand up for himself against bullies. Oh, okay, I guess that's a thing.
Yeah, and I liked that. When I was a kid, I really appreciated those scenes of when I was a kid. The movies were aimed at me as a child, and I appreciated movies like Son of Godzilla and Monster Zero. I did. Of course, as I grew older, I only wanted the horror movie version of it, and there was it's just something about, especially being a boy. We were all about lizards and horrible evil things. And when I once had a Malaysian water monitor, which is a massive lizard. It's the second largest lizard species in the world. The people who gave it to me, they said, we have this lizard, we can't handle it because it hates everything. And you walk into the room and it thrashes and we have to cover it with a blanket so that it doesn't freak out. So you can take it if you want it. And I lifted the blanket and I got to see this massive lizard. And it opened its mouth and hissed at me, and there's strings of venomous saliva that dripped down between the jaws. And I looked at this thing, I'm like, you are the most evil thing I've ever seen in my life. I love you.
I mean, they're beautiful lizards.
I had to have it. Unfortunately, it at one point it got on my back porch and it grabbed the aluminum door and bent it open. So I show up with food to feed it, and I see that the back door of our house is bent open. I'm like, oh crap. So he's out, and eventually the police shot him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
he was, that by the way,
the kind of thing they do.
That, by the way, was the only true story in the Weekly World News, because when the Weekly World News reported that story, there was under the headline, "Police do battle with giant prehistoric reptile." and then when there was, I want to say Nightline, but I can't remember what the show was. There was a subsequent show that about the time that Weekly World News went out of business, they had this documentary on the news story. They said, was there anything that you ever checked into to see if any of these stories were true, that you weren't just making everything up? And they said, well, there was this one guy that had this big lizard that the police shot. We knew that one was like, I am the only true story in the Weekly World News.
Congratulations. That's quite the honor.
I think so.
Wow. Marquette Naturalist writes, in Godzilla vs. Kong, Kong knows sign language better. Better adaptations than Zilla, but no bitching from AIG. Well, they probably will. I don't know if they're going to review the Kong movie, but
I want to complain about Godzilla versus King Kong because that was so fucking stupid. Where where they're praising people for being that we're only the stupid people are smart. Answers in Genesis should appreciate this because all through their Bible, all through their apologetics, wisdom is foolish and only the fools are wise. And
Right.
Godzilla versus King Kong, they did exactly that. Only the stupid people are smart. All the smart people are stupid. And yeah, you have to believe that fluoridation is a communist plot. You have to realize that the Earth is hollow, right? I mean, it was so fucking dumb. I always wanted to say, and my biggest problem with a lot of science fiction movies when I was growing up was that if you want to have somebody understand or believe the one impossible premise that you're bringing up, which is in this case, that you have this lizard-like thing, whatever else has happened to it through radiation has obviously changed it. We wouldn't call this thing a lizard anymore. This is literally a monstrosity because it's a one-of-a-kind freak show. But whatever this is, I'm like, I can't believe I just sidetracked myself. Fuck, I can't believe I went off track like that. Oh, yes. If you want to make people understand this one impossibly huge lizard, that it's something bigger than a building, it's bigger than anything biologically can be. Godzilla is so huge that the synapses in his brain couldn't possibly connect to his feet, right, in any kind of reasonable time frame. There's no way that an animal of this massive weight would ever be able to support itself. I suggested that the ridiculous, the fact that he can withstand all these bullets and missiles and explosions and he just walks past them all is because his skin has become ballistic armor of a type that supports his body weight. So it's not based on his skeleton or his musculature. It's largely based on his skin, and the skin is ballistic armor, structural, weight-bearing, ballistic armor, so that you would have a better chance of hurting him if you're his size and you punch him than if you shoot him with a missile. So my thought was, you take the one ridiculous premise and you make everything else in the movie as realistic as possible to make it look like Godzilla is possible, because you have all of the periphery implies that, well, maybe if everything else makes sense, maybe this one ridiculous thing makes sense. But what they did with making the Godzilla movies, it went completely the other way. They made every other thing about the movie so fucking stupid that Godzilla becomes the reasonable thing, because everything else is so damn dumb. The Earth is hollow? Really? What?
Frustrating.
And those lizards that only have front legs in the recent remakes.
Oh yeah, the skull crawlers.
Oh yeah.
There was some interesting things on Kong's Skull Island that I appreciated. I liked Samuel L. Jackson, who usually just plays the same character, Samuel L. Jackson, all the time. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of times when he played a different and interesting guy, and one of them was in Django Unchained, where he played a character. He played the bad guy, and normally Samuel L. Jackson can't play a good bad guy. He plays a bad guy that you still kind of like. There's 2 times he's played a bad guy where he's really a bad guy. When he played Steven in Django Unchained, I hated that character so much. I was so happy, cheering when he died.
That's right.
And also in Kong's Skull Island, he played a really good bad guy there. Yep, that was brilliant. So there's interesting things going on with that, but there's so much stupidity going on at the same time. Put some thought into it. Put some intelligent writing in it. Rationalize how some of this could possibly be real, so that we can believe it. Not just like, well, having a 400-foot tall radiated mutant lizard that doesn't have a lizard skeleton and is like a conglomeration of all these different things, and that's the most reasonable thing because everything else in the movie is so damn dumb.
They're leaning super heavy on CGI at that point, right? Like they used to need other things for verisimilitude. Now they think that, we have photoreal CG, so we don't need to build in verisimilitude in other methods.
Look, the Monsterverse has been operating on the rule of cool for a while now. That's just how it is. And yeah, I have my problems with the rule of cool as being the pretty much only rule that you have for your franchise, but they're also not going to consult with me anytime soon. So
no.
Unless they're watching.
Yeah,
Hey,
I wanna
Legendary, if you're watching, all three of us are probably willing to, consult with you guys about your next script.
Yeah, I have often fantasized that they would come to me to ask about the 1998 movie that the Devlin people completely fucked up, because I so wanted. When I found out that they were doing Godzilla in 1998, that it was the same people that did in Independence Day, so it's a big budget. They're going to have CGI. They've got Jurassic Park quality CGI, and I'm thinking, yes, you have a Godzilla movie with a budget. You put money into it. That means we can put talent. We can put special effects worthy of this story. Now that means that we should do something really fucking cool. In the Raymond version, the little bit that he provided, you've got the Oppenheimer kind of speech about how horrific this radiation monster is. Godzilla can be immediately near you, but you would never know, because you're swimming in the water, you're staring into the abyss. You wouldn't know that there's a shark already coming for you because you can't see that far in the water. Well, Godzilla can hide himself the same way. But in that movie, in the 1956 movie, the 54-56, when he comes up onto an island, he comes onto the island during a hurricane. So you can't hear him, you can't see him. He's clouded in the thunder and the lightning and the torrential rain, and so all this damage that he's doing is being blamed on the storm. And you can't track a 400-foot tall dragon,
Right.
because it's cloaked in this. No, think about how that makes this a terrifying thing. And then remember that it doesn't have to kill you, it doesn't have to eat you. Godzilla will destroy you by you being near it because of the radiation.
I like the degree to which they got into that in Shin Godzilla, where like they have like radiation danger zones, and there's scenes where like they're like, look, this is the radiation levels, and they fly a drone towards the somewhat dormant Godzilla, and it shorts out because there's just been too much radiation damage. One of my favorite bits of Shin Godzilla there.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I really, really loved about the original Godzilla, which was nobody's ever tried to follow this up. But there's a precedent for it. And it came out in the 30s, way before Godzilla did. The fact that you could be destroyed by Godzilla just by being near Godzilla, the precedent was Cthulhu.
They do share some similarities.
The Lovecraftian mythos. Cthulhu's like 600 feet tall, right? If you get near him, you go insane.
Yeah.
You're biologically the same kind of thing. So Godzilla is this ultimate Lovecraftian horror film. That's the way it should have been done in 2014. That's the way it should have been done in 1998. And with the original movies, 54, 56, they were making an important statement. They really were. I mean, it was a profound, important statement. As you said, they're trying to get under the wire of the censors and all like that. We appreciate that. And the way they conveyed the message was really, really good. What I wanted to do in 1998, if I had if I was involved in that project, I would have made Godzilla look exactly the way he did in 54. In the moment when he tears through the power lines, and in that scene, that's exactly the way my CGI
Not the hand
Godzilla. No, but in that scene where he goes through the power lines, that obese, that with the giant fucking legs and all of that, where he's lumbering the way he is. Yeah, that's fine. I'll take all of that. I would have my Godzilla look like that, but it would be a horror thing. It would be something that would be terrible just to be near it. And in the original movie, you had Raymond Burr playing a character called Steve Martin, and he's a reporter for the United World News, which back then, newspapers were respected. Journalism was respected. Journalism had criteria. They had requirements. They had standards. But in the world I grew up in, you had the weekly world news, where I'm the only true story in the weekly world news, right? So you have tabloids where journalism is just trite bullshit now. So if I was involved in the 1998 thing, I wouldn't have Raymond Burr playing Steve Martin working for a respected newspaper. I would have Steve Martin playing a reporter named Raymond Burr, And he works for the Weekly World News tabloid, where he starts out being ridiculous, where he wants to tell all the bullshit stories that Answers in Genesis want to tell also. Answers in Genesis wants you to believe in all of this ridiculous bullshit. And it would just be like, Transylvania 6-5000. You have the people that work for this tabloid newspaper, and they want to make up all kinds of shit, dramatize, exaggerate, extend it out, make it bigger and better than it was. You lie all you have to make the story interesting. But when he comes across something like Godzilla, when Steve Martin playing Raymond Burr, comes across something like Godzilla, and holy fuck, this is real. I don't have to make believe. I don't have to pretend.
And would anyone then believe him?
Yeah, and so I don't have to exaggerate.
Yeah,
this is really these are people dying by the thousands. This is fucking real. So that just takes Bigfoot and all your cryptozoology, all your alien conspiracies and theory, and it just puts them all in the make-believe shelf. This one is fucking real. And so my character, Steve Martin, would, if I'd done the 1998 version, Steve Martin would have played a character who started out completely ridiculous, and by the end, he's an absolute rationalist, and now he has a sense of fucking perspective.
Awesome.
And he would want to bring credulity. He would want to bring respect, credence back to journalism.
I love that. There's so many plot things that are in there, because he'd be desperately trying to convince people, and they are all, nah, you're the Bigfoot guy. We don't believe you. And they have the real story.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of
and
like
somebody in the chat just said I went off topic. I'm sorry.
Nah.
Was this not the topic?
This is the topic.
Look, Paul had me and Aron on to talk about Godzilla. Everyone should know what's about
I
to
wasn't
happen.
expecting we were going to get to. Jay Victor says no love for Mothra tonight. If we eventually get there, we eventually get there.
I mean, I like the Godzilla King of the Monsters Mothra quite a bit.
Yep.
I also really liked how they did the theme song for her in several locations. And also something I noticed today was that at the very end, when Godzilla's using his weird pulses of power to destroy Ghidorah, you actually hear a faint Mothra cry every time he does it, because he's absorbed her power and part of the whole thing. I really liked all of that. But yeah.
All right.
There were some beautiful things that they did with Mothra. And when you think about, you go back into the 60s and you think about the monsters that they created that Godzilla fought with or against, so many of them were real animals that were small. So you had Spiga or a Kamacharis, would basically praying mantis and tarantula, right? I mean, so we got a spider and a praying mantis, and then you had King Caesar, which is a bit redundant. King Caesar, they both mean the same thing. But if you look at that thing, it's not a king, it's not a Caesar, it's a fucking Pekingese. Yeah. It's barely a dog, right? So everything. Gamera is a fucking turtle, and not a majestic sea turtle. It's a red-eared slider. I mean, well, technically no, because he's got a long tail, so he's kind of a snapping turtle, and he does have tusks, which is neat because turtles don't have teeth anymore, but he did. But they're all small animals made big, and this was a big thing in the 50s. They used to like to have the tarantula. They used to like to have cockroach. There was a movie called Night of the Lepus, where a town was destroyed.
Oh, yes.
a town was destroyed by rabbits,
giant,
the size of German shepherds. They're not even like 30-foot long rabbits. They're rabbits the size of dogs.
Yeah.
Also, and we can't forget there's
Ebera.
1956, The Black Scorpion. I loved this movie, and I was so glad when in 2002, whatever it was, that they brought back. They finally brought back the Black Scorpion. But you have these 30-foot long scorpions and other arachnids and that sort of thing, and they're all like claymation type. But all these movies were based on little things that are suddenly made huge. You never had something that was like. The idea of classing Godzilla as a dinosaur seemed completely out of context with everything else. And so that's the only thing that the Devlin people did right, was when they just said, you know what, this wouldn't have been a dinosaur. This would have been a radiated iguana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until they turned it into a dinosaur anyway.
Yes, because they don't know anything about taxonomy, and neither does Answers in Genesis.
Vandalia 1998 writes, if the god of the Bible was Godzilla, what would Genesis look like?
Probably a lot more roaring. Although, really, if you think about it, like the place that Godzilla fits in best into the Bible is as Tiamat. So, or not, well, as Leviathan, which is the same character as Tiamat in earlier myths.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah, it is. And notice now what Godzilla does that God doesn't do. Godzilla comes in to fix our situation, doesn't depend on us, doesn't ask us for anything, doesn't acknowledge our existence. We have nothing to do with it. This is something where the world is not right and Godzilla needs to fix it. God never takes that responsibility, does he? He always needs some idiot human to do his work, and then the idiot human always uses that as an excuse to rape more children and hamstring horses and do other horrible things.
Yeah. All right, let's see what they say on the review.
The rubber suit.
Who's doing some sort of dance
his
ballerina move? I don't know.
End
what
zone
that is.
celebration.
Yeah,
Yeah. This is what it
zone.
is now. It looks like this. By Boston.
So it was funny when I was watching these clips in preparation for the show. My son Ian walks in. I was looking at my laptop.
And how old is he?
He's 9.
Yeah.
He's not seen the Godzilla movies, and so he saw the older clips, which were just fun. You know, he's like, "Oh, that's kind of whatever." And then he saw that clip. He's like, "That is cool."
that last little bit right before they come together, that was part of the preview. And I remember the first time I saw the preview, my instant reaction was, I am going to the theater to
Gotta be
watch
in the
that.
theater to see
I have
that.
to see that.
That's right. Big damage. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Godzilla's origins, if you're not familiar with it, the first film was 1950.
I guess that goes back to your cool is the rule. That's what Godzilla is about. So
Yeah, it at this point it is. It wasn't always, but yeah, at this point they're going to put what seems cool. And you know what? There's a certain appeal to that. You know, every once in a while I like to just, you know, kind of switch my brain off a little bit and watch fancy CGI monsters attack each other.
Let's throw something else in right now, since we're looking at the footage about what this is. Something that's really, again, the Devlin brothers, when they did their Zilla 98 horrible travesty. You know, the Lord of the Rings was a super successful movie because it honored the fans, it honored the source material, it respected it had more respect for the books than you know, like the Hobbit series did. The Lord of the Rings had respect for the original Ralph Bakshi cartoon version of that movie. It had respect of all the background culture. There are people who love this story, who love this character, who love this author. Let's respect them.
Yeah.
The Devlin brothers came in and said, you know, we've got this franchise that's been going on for like a lifetime, all these different movies, and these people absolutely love this thing. Let's tie it down and shoot it. That's literally what they did.
Aron, are you saying that Godzilla fans weren't the whole time just wondering what Godzilla would be like if it had more cast members from The Simpsons? Because, I mean, that was always one of my big questions. Was what if Hank Azaria was a prominent
what would
part of
Ferris
Godzilla?
Bueller say?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much you could have done, and that was the moment to do it. You know, fuck. But what I wanted to talk about is the breath weapon, because all these other movies that were going on in the 50s and such, they're all, you know, there's a giant praying mantis, there's a giant lizard, there's a giant tarantula, giant cockroaches, whatever. There's little things suddenly turn big, that kind of thing. And then you have the beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which is basically there's a monitor lizard, you know, wandering around eating New York or San Francisco or wherever the fuck it was. But with Godzilla, you had all these different designs, and I'm sure that Dapper Dinosaur has seen these, all of the alternate designs for Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
That they came up with. And it's like you happen across this one that's like this aha moment where there's a fucking choir. You remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Do you remember that when Richard Dreyfuss finally realizes he's wasting his life, he's gone mad, he shouldn't be, why is he fucking building a mountain in his fucking living room? And he decides that he's just going to tear it down, but he tears the top off only, and suddenly he sees it. When he sees Devil's Tower and he realizes what the message is.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what happens with these when they're making all these little animals turn big. but then they decided at some point that, hey, this is not really a statement about nuclear war if we don't have radiation. Let's give him a fucking death weapon. And everybody sees dragons breathing fire, but we're not going to breathe fire. This is not fire. This is radiation. We have personal experience of this. We have water vapor that will kill you.
Yeah.
Water vapor of 600 degrees that will destroy your children that you haven't had yet.
I don't think they're going to show it in this clip, but like shortly after this shot, there's a shot of a woman and child huddled on the street, realizing that they're about to get destroyed by Godzilla's radioactive breath, and they're crying. And like the original, 54, 56, either way, it was a serious movie about some pretty heavy things, and like they did not shy away from like scenes of people with radiation burns in hospitals. It was
profound statement. But when you took the lizard / dinosaur, and back in the 50s, they really thought that the dinosaurs were lizards anyway. They thought that dinosaurs and lizards were the same thing. But when you turn that into a dragon, effectively, you would expect that it would be fire, but it's not fire. Nope. It's radioactive breath. And so this is the steam from Chernobyl that's coming out of Godzilla's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is so much more insidious what it is. And it's genius, the breath weapon that Godzilla has. And the horror aspect of what this is. And then another added thing, that's another little bit of genius, was that when he blows that breath, his dorsal spikes, those weird ass spikes that didn't need to be in the design at all, that just somebody added those. Somebody came up with the idea, well, what happens if he blows that breath, and when he does, those spikes glow? And then look what they did with it in 2014. I took all my kids to go see Godzilla 2014. And when we see Godzilla fighting, those other mutos or whatever it is. And when finally you see suddenly the spikes begin to light up, and you hear that reverberation music, I remember my son saying, "Here it comes." They're ready for it. We're bringing out the big guns. And he opens his mouth, and that death ray comes out, and we're like, "Yeah!" My children are fucking cheering like we're at a football game. Like, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. Savage Cobra writes, AIG is a bag of preopulents.
I guess I'll take a drink. That's one of my rules. In case you didn't know, on most of my stream, we have some drinking rules
with you.
Oh,
I wish I could share some of this with you. If I could share some of this with you, if you were physically here in the room with me, you'd be sleeping on my couch tonight.
Yeah, probably with that stuff. Goodness. Yeah, on my streams we have a bit of a drinking game, and one of them is if anyone super chats anything to the effect that AIG is a bag of dicks, we take a drink. Mostly because of how many times they've falsely copyright claimed videos. Oh. And my favorite one was when they claimed a video of mine that I had done, and in their original video, they were using clips from Hollywood movies under fair use. And they were like, "Yeah, but you can't use fair use, Dapper Dinosaur." And I'm like, "Screw you guys."
Yeah. Which is actually partly why I set up my main channel the way it was like skewed and in the corner and like all warped. Was like back in the day, you could fool some of the copyright stuff with those tricks. You can't
Somebody in
anymore.
the comments said that my beer looked as thick as motor oil. It really is. When I pour this, it really does look like you're draining a crankcase on a 65 Chevy that is way overdue for an oil change. Nice. There's actually smoke that comes off of this black viscous liquid that comes off of it, and it's not bitter. Some people think that stouts are bitter, but this stuff is so sweet. Honestly, it would go good on pancakes. I really ought to try it on pancakes. I'd like to go to Denny's, just bring a bottle of this. If you could bring a bottle of this to Denny's and have it on pancakes. But it'll be pancakes that'll fuck you up.
Yeah. Goodness.
1954. And it was kind of not really a horror film, but it was Godzilla represented the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this big city-destroying force.
Quite a serious origin to the movie, if you think about it.
Yeah, very serious. And the first two filmed were actually like that. And then he started to get a lot sillier. And then it was Godzilla versus this creature, Godzilla. Right. And he became the good guy through all of that. He was defending Japan rather than wiping out Tokyo, like the song says.
Like an anti-hero.
Yeah. Right? Yep. So the Monsterverse changes its origin a little bit. Rather than him being the result of nuclear testing back in the 1950s, he is an ancient titan that was awoken by that testing.
A really big creature.
Yes. And so our atomic testing awakened him, and some of the other ones, as we're going to see in this film, we're told to coexist with these creatures. Right. A lot of people come from an evolutionary point of view, and we're told things that humans are the ones that have to change. But if we're just the result of evolutionary processes, we're just part of the natural world, just like everybody else. We're not any different. Right. So why are we the ones that have to change?
Right. We shouldn't have to. Right.
We don't. Go ahead.
I mean, there's this thing called self-interest, right? Like, I would prefer not to live in a world where like the air and the water is like actively toxic to me. I don't know. I just feel like that would be a more pleasant place to spend my time, is in a world where I can breathe and drink water. I don't know. Maybe that's a reason to, care about the environment, or like one where I can go out and I can see hummingbirds and collared lizards and javelinas and rattlesnakes, and they're not just all gone. I would like to live in a world that still has biodiversity and non-toxic air and water. I don't know. Weird, right? How could anyone who believes in evolution prefer a world that they can actually survive in? What a weird idea.
When they did the original movie, they didn't come up with this idea of Godzilla being an ancient titan. It wasn't in 2014 that they come up with this idea. When they did the original movie, and I remember I told you that Godzilla's never been done correctly. Because in 1954, when they did this, and you had the oxygen destroyer thing, and I understand that there's another statement being made there, and it was an important one, but they killed Godzilla, much like they did in King Kong. In 1933, they did this movie, which was this huge movie, and they spawned all these spin-offs and sequels and such. Well, they had no idea of predicting that in 1933 when they killed King Kong. And realized that, hey, everybody wants to see this fucking thing. We shouldn't have killed it. We could have made follow-up movies. We could have made sequels based on this. But by 1954, they had figured out where they fucked up with King Kong. They should not have killed Godzilla. Now, Godzilla could have given Tokyo a huge fucking bitch slap for having disturbed his nap, and maybe they could have come to some kind of agreement. But I don't know that you wouldn't have been able to make the statement that they wanted to at the time. So what they did was when they realized that this is the most popular thing we've ever done, and Japan has produced a lot of cultural influence. I want to give them credit for that. But there's no argument that Godzilla is their pinnacle. Of all the influences that Japan has had over global culture, Godzilla is their reigning king. When they realized this in the 1950s, they wanted to make another movie based on Godzilla, and they've already killed it. So they have to come up with this other movie where they just ignore that happened.
Well, technically, they say it's a second Godzilla. A number of the movies are in. So one of the things about Godzilla, right, is it has multiple continuities. Most Godzilla movies treat the 1954 Godzilla movie as part of their continuity. And then they gave a throwaway line about how, there must be a new Godzilla. Oh, okay, cool. And then the movie continues on without ever really going back to that. And the only real exception to that is I don't know why it keeps coming up, but Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, where like they use the bones of the original 54 Godzilla to help construct Mechagodzilla, and for that reason, it like turns on the humans because it doesn't like the ghost of Godzilla is inhabiting its bones, and it doesn't like being turned against Godzilla, so it turns on the humans, and that's a whole thing that happens.
So what they did with the Godzilla 2014 was they revived the sequel to the original Gojira, which was rehashed to the American, as Godzilla King of the Monsters. And when they created G14, the thing I'll refer to it as, they revived this the fire monster. I'm trying to remember. I think it was called Fire Monster, but it was Godzilla, and they make no explanation for how the fuck why do we still have Godzilla after we've seen his skeleton? We saw him die, but this same monster is still walking around. Now he's on Monster Island, and now he's fighting a fucking hedgehog. Because remember, everything's a small animal that got big. Gamera is a turtle, and all these are little. Well, there's a hedgehog that's 200 feet long, and that's Ungurus.
I can explain it.
Okay.
Godzilla versus Ghidorah. The timeline got all wonky. There you go. Problem solved. There was time travel, and so everything got confused. Just project that back into the past for Godzilla raids again. And it all suddenly makes so much sense. You don't even have to worry about it.
When the United States
time travel movie,
when the United States said, "You guys have made a really good movie, let's steal it," and they put Raymond Burr in, Japan says, "You know what? We really did make a really great movie. Too bad we killed the fucking monster, just like they did with King Kong, and then they made a bunch of sequels, and they did it with Frankenstein, and they made a bunch of sequels. At least with Frankenstein, he was already dead twice."
Right? Yes. Yeah. Explain that a little bit.
It's not a surprise when you keep bringing that guy back. And then later movies like with Jason and Freddy and what's
Michael Myers?
Michael Myers. It doesn't matter how many times you kill them; they just come back.
Yeah,
we could just ignore that we killed him a bunch of times.
I mean, one time Jason comes back literally because of lightning, just like Frankenstein's monster. He gets shocked by lightning after his grave is dug up, and now he's alive again. He's like, "Oh, okay, I guess, sure."
It's too bad that the people who Yes,
I don't
know that I'm on camera right now.
Doesn't care.
What do you try?
They are.
Aww.
Really? You're gonna French kiss my nose? What? You realize there are people in me right now? You gonna punch me in the mouth? That's why they're called boxers. Okay, Dapper, carry the show for a little bit. I have to.
Okay.
Oh, sure. I can. I'll.
We'll hit play, and I'll see what we got.
I was just going to say that they're remaking Highlander right now, and they promised they're not going to make the same mistake and award the prize in the first movie, because that was also a mistake.
Yeah. So that's I'll give the Godzilla franchise credit for this. They very rarely kill Godzilla after that first movie. So like you get Godzilla versus Destroyer, where Godzilla dies, and it's the end to the whole Heisei era, right? And then they kind of reboot in the Millennium series, but then. Other than a couple movies, the Millennium series is just one reboot after another. And so with those, it doesn't so much matter if Godzilla dies, because the next movie is not going to be in continuity anyway. And also, one of the things that's nice about the experimental nature of the Millennium era is you had a lot of different plot lines. Like you get GMK, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, all-out monster attack, whatever. It's the one with the ridiculously long name that no one ever remembers because it's way too long. But in that one, Godzilla, it's actually a second Godzilla, but it's also sort of like the collective gestalt consciousness of all the people who were killed in Japanese war crimes during World War II come back to Japan to wreak revenge on the nation that killed all of them. And so in that one, Ghidorah is recast as a guardian spirit of Japan who has to fight off the evil Godzilla. So that's one of the cool things about the Millennium series, is that they were willing to take a lot more risks because they knew that everything was basically just going to be a reboot anyway. These are all just their own independent takes on the idea of Godzilla. It also had one of my favorite Godzilla suits because the big fangs and the creepy white eyes are just, I really like it. But maybe we can get some more of the
let's try and get some more AIG in here.
Evolved a certain level of technology that benefits us and increases our survival value. Good for us. Too bad for them. That is just natural selection and action within their worldview.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, though, right?
He's at the top of.
It's not just so in the short term. Yeah, technological progress has made it a lot easier to be a human right now, right? It's you're going to live longer. You're going to be healthier. you're far less likely to starve now than you were 100 years ago, and even more than 200 years ago, and so on. Okay, great. But the problem is that there are also knock-on effects that have long-term consequences for humans, and we're currently experiencing those long-term consequences. Like, I live in Arizona, and our high today was in the 90s. We were approaching the record high for this day in October, and we have done that like 4 times this month or last month for the October. Like, we broke like 2
if I
records
may
in
ask,
October.
whereabouts in Arizona are you?
Tucson.
Okay. So you're 10 degrees on average cooler than Phoenix.
Yeah, about that. Yeah. Phoenix has a few problems. They're a little bit lower elevation, and they have a lot more of the urban heat sink problem going on. So you combine those two
They've
things.
always been stupid hot.
Oh yeah. I mean, I lived in Phoenix for a while, and it was I remember going out to swim in the pool at like midnight or something, and it's still like 105 degrees out.
I remember driving through Phoenix when I was young and pretty and skinny and just a kid. I drove through Phoenix, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning when I pulled in. I just needed a hotel or whatever, but I'm like 22, something like that. So I mean, young skinny kid. I'm wearing nothing but blue jean cutoffs because it's so fucking hot.
Yep.
And I remember I asked somebody at the hotel, "How hot is it?" And when they tell me that it's 118 degrees, I said, "No, wow, how hot is it now?" And they said, "No, that's what I mean. It is now. It's 118 now. It was 123 earlier today."
Yep.
Oh man.
Yep. That's a pretty normal thing.
My best friend of all time lives in Phoenix right now. I'm like, how the fuck? How do you ride an air-cooled motorcycle? Because he's a motorcycle mechanic. How do you ride an air-cooled motorcycle in Phoenix in this kind of heat? His excuse is, yeah, there's 2 or 3 months when it's absolutely unlivable, but the rest of the year, perfect.
I can't disagree too much. And also, I will say, I used to live in like Massachusetts, and I will take a 108 degree day in Tucson over an 87 degree day in Massachusetts anytime, because it's just muggy as hell up there. Whereas down here, it's always dry as a bone. And so like, you just take a quick dip in the pool and suddenly you feel great. So, yeah.
All right. J. Victor writes, the Highlander franchise should have followed its own premise. In the end, there can be only one. Yes. Well,
Yeah,
I agree.
Exactly.
Only one movie. Yes.
But then we need like weird
I
prequel
never
sequels
saw
and whatnot.
I never saw the sequel.
There isn't
I
one.
loved the original movie.
Nope.
Everybody I knew loved the original movie, but they warned me, don't watch the sequel.
Yeah, no, don't bother.
You can see
none of my kids have seen the sequel. Yeah, no.
Sean Connery's face all through that movie. One of my best friends told me that every time you look at Sean Connery's face, he's like, there's moments when he seems to look at the camera and say, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, his performance is the performance of a man who knows what's happening and is not okay with it, but he's getting that paycheck anyway.
All right, Trail Mix writes, all the bigger versions of things are explainable if you consider that it's the same universe as Power Rangers.
So actually, there was a Power Rangers Godzilla crossover comic, which I did. It was a comic series. I think it was a 3-part, and it was fun. And it starts out with the question you're all wondering: who wins in a fight between Godzilla versus the Dragon Zord? That's the first question that they get out of the way, because that's what everyone wants to know. Because basically, the Dragon Zord from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is just a Godzilla Zord. It actually has like the same spin attack on its tail and the finger missiles as Mecha Godzilla does. It's very clearly just a Mecha Godzilla ripoff. So yeah, that's the first thing that they do, is they're like, all right, well, let's have Godzilla fight the Megazord. But it is actually in a different universe. They have to go through like a universe portal thing, the Rangers do, to get into the universe with Godzilla and the Exilians invading from outer space and whatnot. So they're not quite in the same universe, but in that comic book, they're in the same multiverse, I guess.
They're in a... Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody. I realize we're talking about Godzilla today, and we're talking about Answers in Genesis. But since you brought up the Mighty Morphine Power Strangers, I hated that show. I wouldn't let my children, who were young children at the time, I wouldn't let them watch that show because there was fat shaming. There was every fucking possible the worst stereotypes that were perpetuated. That come on, look, the Yellow Ranger was the token Asian. The Pink Ranger was the cute chick. The Black Ranger, of course, the African kid, the token African kid. How overt can this be? This was so shallow, so awful.
If it helps, in season 2, they race swapped the Yellow and Black Ranger, so the Black Ranger was Asian and the Yellow Ranger was black.
I would give that at least after that show, the Yellow Ranger appeared in the sequel for what was it? The one that Bruce Lee's kid was killed in.
Oh, the Crow.
Yeah, so they made a sequel where they get somebody else to, because these people are fucking shameless, Hollywood. But at least, and they had Iggy Pop in his only movie role, but they had the Yellow Ranger in there too, and she at least had something she could do after that, and it was like the only redeeming thing about the Mighty Morphine Power Strangers was that the Yellow Ranger had this cool role that she could play in this horrible sequel that just Hollywood fucks everything.
Chris for $5 writes, it may be hot for Arizona, but it's never too hot for a coffee table, which is a running thing on the line. And here, for those who don't know,
coffee tables are important, Paul.
I am anti-coffee table, and Shannon is pro-coffee table, and we live in the same house, so it's an ongoing...
I think that just means now you're pro-coffee table. I'm pretty sure that's what that means.
No.
I envy you. Mm-hmm. I envy you. Look at this is my living room.
Okay.
I have 60 plus. I don't know how many snakes I have. But they're everywhere.
So my petty disdain for clutter on a coffee table is irrelevant to your life, I guess. All right.
Yeah, I actually have a coffee table, but it's full of snake accessories now. And just it's
Allison McClone writes, Highlander should have ended with 1. We all agree. Mm-hmm. Alien should have ended with aliens.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aliens, plural?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I want to say that Predator 1 and 2, they were good. Both of them. I liked them. Mm-hmm. Predator 3 should never have happened. Aliens, anything after Aliens should never have happened.
I agree.
What they should have done, Aliens 3 and Predator 3 should have been the same movie.
Ooh.
Aliens 3 and Predator 3, and they should have started. Nobody's going to know because they have to be old like me to remember this, but there was a thing called American Gladiators.
I remember that.
Yeah, no, they had these. There were 2 women in this show. One of them named Zap, and the other one was named Gold. They're both beautiful women, but they weren't conventional pretty because they had the arms. They're beautiful women, beautiful blonde women, but they had the arms and legs of Lou fucking Ferrigno. They were
okay.
They were huge, muscle-bound, badass women. And I remember watching the show because American Gladiators, you would have this like 110-pound soccer mom, and her job is to get the medicine ball past Zap.
Okay.
And Zap just like planted her feet both like and just let her knuckles drag the ground. And we're talking about a beautiful woman here, but she's fucking butch. She's so butch. And then
just a wall of a human being.
This little soccer mom tries to get the medicine ball past her, and what I saw was the Zap grabbed her, stopped her entire body forward motion with one hand, stopped her, boom, stopped her, picked her up off the ground with one arm fully extended, threw her into the rubber mat so that she bounced, caught her with both hands over her head, and threw the woman away like a piece of trash. and her feet never moved. And I thought, that woman could kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that exciting.
I'm not sure that still relates to aliens anymore, but okay.
Yeah, it's a little off topic.
But what if you had
right.
someone like her play the grown-up version of Newt?
Well, that's what my biggest problem with Alien 3 was they killed Newt in the first 2 seconds, right?
Yeah,
exactly. What if Newt grew up to be the ultimate badass character ever in any movie?
I agree.
She's
I agree.
beautiful.
That would have been awesome.
She's this beautiful woman, but she's also this super fucking savage, awesomely trained hyper warrior. And they tried to do this with a couple of the sequels for Predator. You remember you had this where they were. You remember they always said that it was in the hottest years that the Predators would show up, but suddenly they're in Antarctica. They've just gone against their own thing.
Yeah.
Right. So the Predators are supposed to be from a hot planet. They've needed the hottest possible years to do this, but suddenly you're in Antarctica. That's inconsistent. But if you're going to do this movie and you want to have the xenomorphs attack this planet, then you have Newt, the grown-up version of Newt, and she's the ultimate badass female warrior there ever was, because she lived through that shit when she was 5. You could have made Alien 3, Predator 3 would have been the same movie. It would have starred a woman, and she would have been.
But would that have
awesome.
undermined Ripley? And they totally butcher Ripley too, because they make her suddenly. They didn't understand what made her so badass in 1 and 2.
Can we just give some credit to this for a moment? The reason that Ripley was so fucking awesome is she was terrified. She had a phobia.
Right.
That she had to face a phobia. And anybody that knows what a phobia is, if you have a fear, and I have one, I don't want to tell everybody what it is, but if you have to face that phobic fear, and this woman, Ripley, you have the Marines. You have the fucking Marines are going to be, and Ripley doesn't want to go. She's absolutely terrified.
Yep.
She has nightmares of these things every day. The heroes of the movie Aliens are a phobic woman who's absolutely terrified out of her fucking mind, and a 5-year-old little girl.
Yep.
Those are the heroes. Those are the bravest people. Those are the ones who take on the huge challenge. Continue that. We could do some more with that.
Well, but that's why I wouldn't want Ripley to be. I wouldn't actually want Ripley to be super physically,
No, you don't need her.
That.
You don't need. But she's the sensei.
Sure.
She's the Pai Mei.
You could make Ripley more like the Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, where she's like, okay, well, this was because this was my life.
And is that a great example as well? Because if you saw the original Terminator movie, Linda Hamilton's character is such a fucking wuss.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But when you see her in Terminator 2, you're like,
yeah, suddenly she's
Terminator 2, and you're like, oh, holy shit, that woman would whoop my ass.
Right, yeah. All right.
So yeah,
J. Victor writes, the Green Power Ranger. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I love to see that kind of character development where the people where adversity has caused somebody to become super fucking strong. And then you also inspire by the next generation. You inspire people who admire who you were. You taught them, and now they are honoring your memory.
Yeah.
All that's better character development than we have in Godzilla or in Answers to Genesis. The Green Power Ranger wasn't Irish, though, says J. Victor. So, all right, they did one thing.
That's true. He was. Well, okay, so it's ambiguous about his ethnicity, although later on we find out that apparently he was Native American the whole time. But he had been adopted by white people. And he didn't know that he was Native American until he went back in time to interact with his ancestor, who turned out to be a Native American elder who he had met previously somehow. It was a little weird. It was some time travel-y stuff.
Well, let's see why we have.
I want to comment that somebody said that I am afraid of being seated next to Kent Hovind on an international flight. I guarantee you that inmate number 0645-2017 would be more afraid of being sitting next to me.
Also, I'm not convinced he can go on an international flight, but
there's another trial with him. He might get a new inmate number. We might have to, update our label for him.
I no longer care about the convicted fraud behind, with the mail order catalog PhD. There's much bigger fish. I'm waiting for another inmate number to come up shortly.
So I don't care much about what Kent is up to now. However, I do care about that trial because I do consider the victim in that trial to be a friend of mine. So
that's not what I wasn't talking about. Kent Hovind. I was talking about a much bigger
Aron
fish.
was talking about the
yes, yeah. Well, there's that
number.
Too.
We'll just call him 45.
The guy the guy who tried to destroy the United States experiment, the guy who tried to undermine our representative democracy and replace it with a theocratic autocracy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
Kent Hovind wishes he could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, again, as you mentioned, like people who are making these movies, they have an idea, an ideology, and they have ideas they want people to buy into, right? As we'll see in Godzilla. And they're pushing this kind of climate environmentalism ideology from a secular perspective. And they're saying you should care so much about the world and care so much about the environment. But why should people care from their perspective? If we're just rearranged pond scum and that's all we are, why care about people, the earth, animals? When we die, we cease to have any memory of anything ever happening. There's no eternal consequences. Who cares?
And the fact that they are telling us that we should do something different shows us that they recognize that we are different.
That's
and
right.
That we're different than those animals.
Yep.
And that we need to behave differently. And,
Okay, so this entire argument... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just... I'm getting this from Mike Johnson, our current Speaker of the House. I'm getting this from Rabbi Manus Friedman, that I'm currently writing a video about. They all have the same perspective. They want to be so important because their humility requires that they be so important that they're the reason the universe exists.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't personally be immortal and the center of everything, then nothing fucking matters. Kill everybody. That's their psychological perspective. I was in a movie called My Week in Atheism, and at the end of that movie, I watched this guy, and I got a recording of him giving a sermon to his own congregation, wherein he admitted to being the most nihilistic person I'd ever met. He said that if he couldn't continue to exist for billions of years, that he said if what he does today doesn't still matter billions of years from now, then it doesn't matter now.
Which is a weird take to me.
He said that it doesn't. We should not even bother trying to extend human life. We shouldn't bother trying to minimize suffering. If you can't still be the most important thing that ever was billions of years from now, then fuck everybody now. That's what he's saying. And that's what these people are saying. But if you realize that you're part of nature, not apart from it, and that you have and this is the thing, you have a responsibility to your neighbors, your family, the people who depend on you. Christianity is largely a rejection of all responsibility. Mm-hmm. You don't have to show atonement for anything you've done wrong. You can just pretend that your magic imaginary friend has forgiven you. There's nothing you're ever going to even think about doing to make anything right where you've done anybody wrong. I have done people wrong in my life. And the fortunate thing for me is that those people have been forgiving. Those people have been forgiving. That's fortunate for me. And I take the lesson from that. I don't think that I've ever been victimized. I have been a victimizer, and I've grown out of that. And I'm just glad that I haven't done that much damage in the ignorance of my youth. And that I still know the people that I knew when I was young, and they still consider me friends. They respect my opinion about things. That's amazing. the sad thing is I used to believe in karma, and I see people who never accept where they fucked up, where they fucked someone else over. Never. They'll never admit to any wrong that they've ever done. And they just don't, and they want to play that they're the victim at the same time as being the ultimate villain. So what is it, the cry bully? That's not going to be my way. Christianity wants to evade all responsibility. You don't have to show penance. You don't have to correct anything you've done. You don't have to show responsibility you've ever done. You don't have to worry about the environment. Remember, these people are bringing up the environment over and over again. They want to say that it doesn't matter what we do to the planet because Jesus is going to come back and destroy everything anyway. So may as well bring as many souls as we can unto the Lord. It just seems to me that they want to put themselves at the center. They want to say that you're not supposed to have pride. You're supposed to be humble, but they want to pretend they're the most important thing. They're the reason the universe exists. Fuck everybody else. And I got a problem with that.
I certainly do too, and I think that is very characteristic of the Christianity that is at least the most politically vocal, especially in the U.S. Although I will say that I do know of a number of Christian organizations that are very strong in environmental messaging and social justice issues and things like that. And so there is the fact that it is hard to say any one thing about Christianity and have that apply to all forms of Christianity because it's really not one thing. It's a
granted and fair point, but we are talking about fundamentalists right now.
Yeah. When we're talking about things like, AIG or the people that 45 allied himself to, since, there's no way in which 45 is meaningfully a Christian under any definition. However, he aligned himself with some of them.
How do the Christians consider him to be one of them?
Oh, because he's willing to trash the same people that they hate. That's all it takes.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Is that really honestly it?
And I think some of them have gone so far as to actually, I know some of them have gone so far as to delude themselves into thinking that he actually believes like they do. Like I guess I knew. I don't really keep in contact with these people, but I've known people who legitimately thought that he was a devout Protestant evangelical Christian, and I'm just like, really? The guy whose favorite Bible verse is from like 2 Corinthians, who doesn't know which way to hold a Bible? That's the guy who has multiple cheating scandals with multiple wives,
who cheated on everybody.
Yeah,
just period.
And I guess, I can't say that, like, being a Christian makes you a good person, because that's also not true. But, like, I'll just say this. He's not evincing any of the things that Christians like to say that they stand for. And there's no evidence of him ever going to church or any of these things.
There are people who are good people and who identify with Christianity because they hear, that God equals good, and they're good people, and they're genuinely good people. They don't know fuck all about history or theology or science or anything, but they're genuinely. I've known this. I've known people like I've known a few ordained ministers who they're not intellectuals, they're not scholars, but they think that being goodly is being godly, and if they care about humanity, they have actual serious compassion for other people, well, then they kind of relate to Christianity because they don't study a whole lot about it. That's an unfortunate thing. Answers in Genesis knows better. The people that I'm talking about follow emotions, not intellect, not scholarship, but Answers in Genesis knows that they are bullshitting people.
Oh, yeah.
But they make $20 million a year selling bullshit to people.
Well, the easiest way for me to notice is they have a bunch of people with actual PhDs, right? Who actually got real PhDs. And they are all saying, or they are continually saying things that they cannot possibly believe if they actually did the work to get that PhD, because they know why it's wrong, right? So you get things like Nathaniel Jeanson, pretending that you can't measure the long-term substitution rate in humans, which you absolutely can. We can do it with multiple different populations who have known divergence times from the historical period, from which you can draw predictions for both if the substitution rate were, as Jeanson says, just the mutation rate versus the actual measured amount of substitutions in, say, autosomal DNA, so like Y chromosomes and mitochondria. Like you know that he knows this. There's no possible way for him not to. Or you get things like Andrew Snelling, who will just straight up lie about where fossils are from. And I know because I checked on where the fossils he was talking about are from. And he's the originator of the AIG idea that the Cenozoic is post-flood, and the Mesozoic and Paleozoic are flood rocks. So you know he's lying about this. There are some of them that I think might just genuinely be outside their field, like Gabriella Haynes in her Archaeopteryx paper, where it's just like her PhD was on insects like it was Mesozoic insects in Brazil, and so like I don't actually think she knows anything about birds. So
wait,
in some cases,
somebody
like,
on Answers in Genesis wrote a paper on Mesozoic insects in Brazil.
Before she was employed there, that was her thesis, was about identifying beetle species by preserved wings in some formation in Brazil at an actual university there. Although curiously, her PhD advisor has been the advisor to a number of Brazilian creationist PhD students. So it seems like there's something weird going on there, but it is an accredited university. And I did read her thesis, which was partially in Portuguese, which was a bit of a challenge because that's a language I've never studied before. So I'm trying to puzzle my way through Portuguese with my French and Spanish knowledge, which mostly worked. But yeah, that was...
At least you have that. I spent 2 or 3 years studying Russian, and then fucking Putin.
Yeah.
Putin made Russian a language I wasn't even interested in learning anymore.
Look, there's still a lot of cool Russian literature out there that's from before Putin.
There's a bunch of wonderful people in Russia,
yeah,
who are teaching Russian language. Wonderful people. I would love to have gone to that country. I was invited to speak in that country twice, and I was fully prepared that if I'm going to give a presentation in Russia, I'm going to give my presentation in Russian.
Pretty cool.
And I was fully prepared for that. But as of the last 3 years, that fucking asshole Putin.
Yeah.
All right, we have Red Fox.
Was that a yawn? Did I hear a yawn out of you?
Paul's fading fast.
No,
I am so disappointed in you,
here,
Paul.
but that makes no difference. The Antarctica Temple from AVP was built when Antarctica was an equatorial jungle. So apparently, someone's harmonized.
That doesn't make any sense though, because
someone's harmonized in the same way you harmonize Bible contradictions. It's like, we can.
So that
you know what?
There's a couple problems there.
Paul,
One,
Paul, if you just want to put this show on autopilot, let me and Dapper nerd out to Godzilla.
I honestly don't think. I don't know if you've noticed what's been happening the last 2 hours, but you two are saying most of the words. So it's all good.
Paul's here to press the play button.
Do you have a Cuban? Just sit on the back porch and enjoy that.
All right. No. I'm enjoying this.
We need him to be able to press play. That's the thing, though.
That's right.
Okay.
And now, Jay Victor, we have a fun fact. Once you've been in the prison system, you get a number for life, even if you're. I want to say I'm hoping this means say reincarcerated as opposed to reincarnated.
Yeah, I think what he means is reincarcerated. So here's my question about that though, right? Because Kent was imprisoned in the federal prison system, but currently he's being charged in the Alabama state courts, which mean that he would go to the Alabama's prison system. And I don't think they have the same prisoner numbering conventions.
Probably not.
So I think if he went back to federal prison, he would get the same inmate number. But I think if he's in an Alabama prison, he's probably going to have a different ID.
This will probably come back. 45 will probably teach us all these ins and outs because he's going to be.
Oh yeah, he'll be in Georgia and federal. Yeah, good point.
And Lloydie writes, "Thanks to all of you, and you're very welcome."
Thank you for watching.
All right. Well, let's try and get a couple more minutes of this Answers in Genesis thing under our belt.
Yes,
I'm delighted. I'm delighted that Paul asked me to participate in this. I wish I could change my shirt to one of my collection of Godzilla shirts. Because
if you want to, I can take you off screen for a minute if you feel like going to change. But
but I just want to thank you, and I want to show respect, Paul. And I feel that I've been disrespectful. I admire you, and I envy you to a degree. You don't live in my country, you lucky bastard.
Yeah. Well, if that's a thing to be envied for, I suppose, yeah. Indeed.
So, but thank you for putting this together. I am having a whole lot of fun with this.
Same.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I as soon as I saw the Godzilla thing, I knew which two people I cared about having on. So this is amazing. The dream come true.
Yeah, when I heard that you wanted Godzilla, I was like, oh, well, done. Just tell me when, I'll be there. I don't care. I'll make it happen.
Exactly.
I made a video where I declared that Godzilla was my god, and I did all of these counter apologetics things where I equated Godzilla to Cthulhu.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
There's only one comparison in anything that was written before the 1954 was honestly H.P. Lovecraft. Cthulhu. I would love to see a movie about Godzilla versus Cthulhu.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Just decide to combine forces against humanity.
Someone should write that. Absolutely, someone should write that.
They did a movie about that, and it was such a wasted opportunity. There was a movie where they actually show Cthulhu, and it was like an underwater. Kirsten Stewart was in it. There's this underwater.
Oh yeah, I remember that movie.
They showed Cthulhu in it and didn't use it. There was so many missed opportunities. People behind. I wish that I worked in Hollywood. I would be a super gazillionaire if I worked in Hollywood, because I see all of these missed opportunities.
Kickstarter for AronRa's first feature film. Let's do it.
Right. That's right.
Godzilla versus Cthulhu.
There you go. Good luck with the
Rocky
licensing.
versus Rambo.
God has given us dominion, and we're supposed to be good stewards of what
We
He's
have
given.
the best reason to care about the earth because God told us to care about
Yes.
this earth, right?
Exactly.
For His glory and the good of mankind.
The best reason is Mom said so. What more reason could I possibly need?
Here's the thing. If that were the case, if you guys had the best reason to care about the earth, then you'd fucking do it. Instead, you don't. So clearly you have the worst reason to care about the earth because you evidently don't care about it.
And you get angry when other people try to.
Right? And like, that writ right there, that gets to me a little bit. It's like, we have the best reason to be environmentalists.
Yeah.
Okay, well then go do it. Seriously, go do it. Advocate for clean energy. Advocate for less oil use. But
I need to get the super chat away, but while Aron has stepped away from camera, otherwise it's in a whole other hour. What do you guys think of Godzilla in 1998? We're referring to that. That's the Godzilla that shall not be named tonight.
Yeah, I famously reject the very existence of that movie.
Yeah. So although Aron keeps bringing it up,
He does.
but so I don't we don't like it.
No,
let's just put it that way. It is the of all the Godzilla films, it is the lowest ranked. Yes.
Yeah. I think I'll say this. I did like the line, "That's a lot of fish," when they dump out the fish onto the streets of New York. I thought that was a fun line. I'll give it that.
So there are some things about, like, there are individual, like, some moments that are not awful, but every movie has moments that are not awful.
Exactly. Yeah. If we just go with, oh, well, this movie isn't awful because of this
and
one line.
And also, if you go with like greatest potential, like if you measure it on some kind of missed opportunity scale, it's up there. It's up there.
It's so much missed opportunity. And the thing is, there are earlier ideas about an American Godzilla film that are so much better that we could have had, and it just didn't happen. So.
And thank you, Too Young to Feel This Old. Much love to y'all. We appreciate you. Owen Aron's back. All right, here we go.
The only thing I would have taken from the Devlin people was the thing about it being not a dinosaur, that it being, a mutated lizard. But a fundamentally structurally different, because of the radiation and everything, lizard. I wouldn't have gone with the fire monster titans thing, that these things like predated all of the earth that we have now, because I have some respect for the reality of evolution. But I get that Godzilla can't be a dinosaur, and if he was a lizard, he wouldn't look like the TriStar thing. They took away his breath weapon. They took away virtually everything that made him cool. And one other thing about the Devlin version of Godzilla. When they have him cornered and the military is beating him down, they're firing down on him, and it would look like this is the end of the movie. When they have the iguana, right, trapped, and they're shooting him instead. You remember that bridge scene where they tied him down and shot him? That was so fucking disrespectful, deliberately disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
But what if they had Godzilla pinned to the point where they're hitting him with this, and suddenly his fucking dorsal spikes begin to glow?
Different movie
And
right there.
then, holy fucking shit, he comes back, blows the shit out of everything. And when he stands there and faces our military and nobody's firing a shot because they're too fucking scared to piss him off anymore, then he wipes his jaw and turns around and stomps away and takes one last look at us before he gets in the water. And we're like, no, dude, we're cool.
See, Aron, that's what would happen in a movie made by someone who likes Godzilla. That's the problem.
Yes.
I will also say that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All I was going to say was that I think Cloverfield is the movie that 98 Godzilla wanted to be.
Yeah.
I gotta say, actually, I've always thought it would be cool to have a Godzilla movie that is from the perspective of just a small group, like a family or a group of friends, who are trying to survive a Godzilla attack on the city, and like what they have to go through to try like getting like the subway systems and trying to avoid atomic breaths. And like there's all these people like you hear like military personnel talking about like radiation. They're trying to flee from the radiation. Because quite frankly, usually the human part of any Godzilla movie is the most boring part. And I think that would be an interesting way to take a Godzilla movie and make it like Cloverfield, where you're like, it's not so much a movie about the monster as it is the people who have to try to survive the monster attack. And then I also think it would be cool to have a Godzilla movie where like you just don't care about the humans, you just watch monsters fight for 2 hours.
That's right.
I
think that's where they're going.
One other critique.
The one next year, I think, is that, isn't it?
Oh, good.
Yeah, I got to throw in one more critique.
Cool.
I liked that Jackie Chan was doing a series of movies in the 1990s where he's showing places in Asia that Americans don't know anything about. And he's showing that they have skyscrapers, that they have modern cars and buildings and everything, and this really cool environment in which they live. Because Americans, we're so fucking insular and self-centered that we have no idea at all. And that puts us at a disadvantage. If I was going to be doing a Godzilla movie, I would want to be able to show that there is the rest of this world. And I wouldn't be putting Godzilla in New York or San Francisco. I wouldn't have put him in San Francisco, but San Francisco is more reasonable than putting him in New York. Tokyo is amazing. Fucking keep him in Tokyo. But the problem is the United States has had so much. We're so fucking innately racist. We wouldn't let Bruce Lee play the character that he wrote in the show that he designed for himself. We put David Carradine in there. We had to move everything to America because we just have to make everything about ourselves. And that, with Answers in Genesis, is much the same thing. They have to put themselves at the pinnacle. They have to pretend that they're super important. It's not like Christianity, and certainly not creationists. Young Earth creationists like Answers in Genesis. They're not concerned about anybody else. It's that we have to be the super special great ones. It's not like you can't. I've often said that if you want your life to mean something, try making somebody else's life meaningful. Answers in Genesis cannot understand that philosophy. They're too self-centered.
We'll see what they have to say about environmentalism then.
Yeah,
because they're pretty self-centered about that.
Makes me feel like I shouldn't have this, but we're talking about movies. So there's I know it's not kung fu, but there's a new Shogun show starting next month that I'm actually excited about. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
There's a new a reboot of Shogun.
Oh.
Anyway.
Now, in this film, there is a lot of, I talked about biblical imagery.
Yep.
And the director himself made some comments that caught our eye.
Yeah, so check out this quote. He said, myself and my writing partner, Zach Shields, we kept saying that we wanted to put the God back in Godzilla. By that, I mean the way that I always saw the creatures growing up. I didn't see men in rubber suits. I saw ancient, powerful, mythic creatures. To me, these creatures were intelligent beings fighting out old grudges. They were the equivalent of dragons and giants and all the creatures you read about in mythology and the Bible. And that's what they were.
Mythology
That's sort of
and the Bible, as if they're different things.
Yeah.
So they may not like that. We'll see.
that we wanted to add to the film.
He must have seen the clip we watched with the man in the rubber suit.
That was not an old grudge. That was a bad dance.
So I've got to hang out on my hang-ups.
But it's interesting that he separated mythology from the Bible.
Sure.
I don't know if that was his intent, but
Yeah.
that's. But he also.
No, we like to use the myth, but the Bible is just another form of mythology, or it's in the set of.
Well, one thing that I'm curious about is that they seem to be just assuming that all the creative talent behind this movie, at least in terms of the big picture stuff, like writing, directing, producing, that none of them are Christians. And I don't think that that's a fair assumption. I don't know if they've actually looked into that, because I have no idea if the people involved are Christians or not. And they just assume that they have this secular, atheistic, evolutionist worldview. And I think it's a manifestation of their weird us versus them mentality, where there are two types of people in the world. There are Christians and there are atheist evolutionists, and people the majority of Christians who accept evolution as a fact of reality. They just ignore that those people exist.
Right.
And so I think this might be part of that, because they're always just assuming that, none of these people could possibly agree with me about the broad strokes of metaphysics. No. They believe in evolution, so they must be atheists.
I don't know if you know who Ben Burt is.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Ben Burt was a sound designer. He created all the sound and the sound mix for the first Star Wars films. So he created the lightsaber sounds and all the blaster sounds and all those kind of things. We were talking about sound design earlier, and that's the kind of thing Ben would do. Anyway, Ben worked as the editor, both the sound and the visual editor, for Attack of the Clones and for Revenge of the Sith. And one of the things, my great joys, was that I got to bond with Ben over. I was a fundamentalist Christian working on this film, and he was a fundamentalist Christian working on the film. And he was second in command,
atheists?
really, to George on the film.
No, I thought that the only way to get a job in Hollywood was to be an atheist who enjoys eating infants.
Exactly. Well, this is the point: was that we were the only, as far as I know, he and I were the only Christians on set. But there was literally, other than George, there was no one higher on set than Ben Burt.
Yeah,
So yes, I think you make a great point. It's absolutely not a great assumption to make, and even then, that of course, Christianity. If you're from the West, Christianity is part of our cultural. I know. Look at all the doggies; it's so cute.
Yeah, they make a big deal sometimes about imagery taken from the Bible, and it's it's a part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Whether or not anyone working on the film in a high level is a Christian or not, biblical imagery resonates with audiences in the United States and the Western world generally, because it's been part of the culture for about, depending on where you are, somewhere between 2,000 and 1,500 years, right?
Right.
Tiamat and Leviathan have influenced literature for 5,000 years.
Oh yeah,
we respect that, right? We don't believe it,
right? Yeah, if anyone wrote any kind of savior story right now in Hollywood and didn't have some kind of Christ illusion like in there and somewhere, they're not connecting with their audience.
I think you're describing Neil Breen, who definitely casts himself as actual alien cyber Jesus, complete with stigmata and circuit boards glued to his arms.
But like you look at the other, like
If
the Man of
Jesus
Steel-
had been half as good as he pretended to be, he would have had that armor of Iron Man. He would have
That's right.
sacrificed himself like Iron Man did.
But same thing with
Forget
Man of
walking on
Steel,
water,
right?
he's
Like
gonna fly.
the Superman films where you have the person come from the outside the Earth to come and save the Earth, right? Like, I mean, they definitely do. You just have to include, if you're gonna
Yeah.
have a savior character, you have to allude to Christianity. Savior stuff. It doesn't mean you're
The thing is,
being homage to it.
culturally, we have these stock characters that we use as shorthand ways to get across large amounts of like background information about a character without needing to state all of it. That's why stock characters exist. And the fact is that the savior from outside who comes in to solve whatever problem there is a stock character that's largely based on the character of Jesus from the New Testament. And using that is not an indication of one's Christianity or lack thereof. And so you should not assume either way that, you know, the people producing this movie are or are not Christians. If you want to talk about it, I guess you can. I don't see why it matters much. But if it is something you want to talk about, you should probably look it up, which, given that they can't even get when the first appearance of King Ghidorah is, I don't think they ever bothered to look up whether or not these filmmakers have any religious affiliation, whether it be Christian or anything else.
Gupdu 3 observes that with how many animals Aron has, he could be Noah. Trouble is, Aron has far too many reptiles he's thinking that every single type of reptile is a kind, and that they must be unclean because he brought 7 of each of them. It's just not the math doesn't work.
Well, speaking of math and Noah, I love that the Ark Encounter has a zookeeping staff, and they keep a few hundred animals, and there are like 12 of them. And I'm always like, that's a curious ratio, because according to you guys, 8 people can keep several tens of can keep several tens of thousands of animals for a year, but you guys can't keep your like 600 animals in your zoo with fewer than like a couple dozen people, and you need seasonal help with it.
And they're all animals that can easily live in Kentucky without a problem, right? Like,
right, yeah. They've got like llamas and like zebroid crosses, and it's like, oh, okay, well, can you like toss in some like penguins or like some bears from like the Arctic, or
that's exactly right, yeah.
Elephants, maybe? I don't know.
I would like to add something that Answers in Genesis doesn't understand. When they talk about how we're always the pinnacle, that we're always, you know, the ones dominating everyone else, they don't understand that other animals have capacity, other animals have compassion, other animals have a degree of understanding. And while I wouldn't say that the snakes are necessarily the most intelligent species, we have other intelligent species besides humans. These things understand a degree of morality. This snake has never harmed another person because he was handled properly. He was raised by people who cared about him. He's never going to hurt anybody. He's toward the end of his life. He's never bitten anyone. He gives a shit about us. We take him places and we show him things. We like to take him on adventures, and he appreciates it.
Yeah.
And he enjoys this because he's not a complete dick. He's not reactionary. He's not hateful. He's been treated.
That snake is a better person than Ken Ham.
Largely, yeah.
Not a high bar.
I have venomous snakes who are better people than Ken Ham or Kent Hovind or Ray Comfort.
Yeah, no, I'd buy that.
Even in the Bible, I think the snake is the hero of Genesis 3. So, you know, whatever.
It is curious when they say like the snake lied to people. It's like, not according to the text, he didn't.
Yep, God lied. The serpent didn't. The serpent told the truth.
Yep.
told Total Film Magazine that he wanted Godzilla and other titans to feel ancient and unknowable, mythic and biblical, with a power and scale that is truly godlike. Like gods, these are creatures whose motivations and machinations take place on a higher plane beyond our understanding. And when they clash, looking to settle scores millennia in the making, the result is truly apocalyptic, like something out of the Bible. And so he had that mindset going into it. He's not trying to diminish the Bible. He's not viewing it as a literal history and we're going to make a biblically accurate movie.
Sure, no.
But he's drawing imagery and concepts from that. And we're going to see several things as we go along.
He wants to make it really big,
Yes.
epic. Some people call it biblical in proportions.
Yes.
That's kind of what he's borrowing from.
When they say a flood of biblical proportion, well, not unless it's a global flood, but that's what people will say, things like that.
Yeah.
I like
by
that
the
your
way,
mouse is visible in the video there, Paul.
Mine is
Yeah,
interesting.
I noticed it before. Yeah, because you clearly screen captured this, right, rather than downloading it directly.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Not only did I screen capture because it's on their Netflix style service, and you just it's funny. Doesn't matter. I was doing other things while I was doing it, and I've noticed that when I've screen captured before. Yes, that's funny.
Those dogs seem to be having a fun time.
They're having a great time. This happens every night in my house. I can't have professionalism because I have these dogs. I have 60 some odd snakes and they're chill. But 3 fucking dogs, too damn many.
I don't know if you can hear mine. Mine is going to need to let out soon too.
Aw.
But they love each other. This is a very happy household. One of the things that frustrates me a lot that I see in creationists when I chime in on any of their conversations in social media, they tell me that I'm unhappy. You don't know fucking anything about. You think I'm unhappy? I couldn't be more satisfied with my situation. I have an awful lot of love in my family, in my pets, in the state of my life right now. If something were to happen and I would die tomorrow, I'm satisfied. I had a good run. I had a better run than any Christian I know. And I say that sincerely.
Well, I think part of it is that for a lot of them, they get, I mean, clearly for people like AIG, right? They get all of their meaning from their particular brand of Christianity. And so the idea that someone gets meaning somewhere else doesn't seem to compute to them. And but that's the thing, is people can actually get meaning and satisfaction and happiness from different sources. It turns out we're not all the same. And the fact that they don't get it from the same place that you do, that just doesn't seem to compute to them. They just must think that you're actually acting. You're actually miserable on the inside, but you want to act happy for some reason, I guess, I don't know, to try to send little kids to hell or something by getting them to not believe in Jesus.
Look at all the people who want to be one with everything, right? The Buddhist perspective.
Mhm.
I am part of I am part of the biosphere. I am an animal among all of the other animals that exist on my planet. I know where I exist in time and space and in chronology and phylogeny. And creationists just have to pretend that the universe was created for them, and not just for them. It's more specific than that. It's that the white people are more important than everybody else. They get that specific about it. And I'm not just talking about, certain political organizations. I'm talking about people in my own family here.
Yeah.
That it's disturbing that anybody could admit, anybody could think in such a limited way. And when I suggest that other animals have compassion and rights, maybe they don't have the intelligence, maybe they don't have the speech capacity, they don't have a way of expressing how the needs that they have, and that maybe we need to be more attentive to understand what it is that they need. They just shut down because it's all about denying responsibility. Christianity and Islam are about denying responsibility. Pretend to be, what is the term I like is cry bully. You're causing the problem and pretending to be the victim at the same time.
Oh, this is somewhat interesting. So Sume Guy in the
Will
chat
you
says
stop it?
that they wanted to say that
Professional
Eiji
here.
Tsuburaya, the special effects director of Gojira and tons of old Toho monster movies, was a Christian, an actual minority in Japan. Didn't know that. And yeah, that is true. They are a minority in Japan. They've there have been various expulsion edicts against Christian groups in Japan. Also, one of the few buildings that wasn't completely destroyed in Hiroshima, or no, sorry, in Nagasaki, after the bombing, was actually a Catholic monastery, and they took in a lot of the survivors who were in sort of like the peripheral area of the blast. So yeah, it's Christianity has a weird history in Japan, very weird history.
They did one of the few bucket list items that I have now that I've met and traveled around and partied with and had dined with Richard Dawkins and Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is going to sound strange, but one of the few bucket item lists that I have to go to Japan and go to their Godzilla theme park.
Yeah, I never got to go to that. I've been to Japan a few times, but I was with the Navy, and so I could only go so far. And the Godzilla park was outside of the range of where I was allowed to go.
I don't have a lot of bucket list items left, which for a man of my age is a really pleasant thing to say. I've only got, I can think of, I want to go to the Godzilla. I want to go to a Godzilla theme park, and I want to see the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot left.
Well, the Northern Lights aren't too bad. I mean, just go up to Alaska for a little while.
Fuck thee. I've been to Iceland and Finland and Norway so many times.
It just never happened, huh?
Both of my kids got to see the Northern Lights. Both of them. My daughter got to see the Northern Lights as she was landing in Iceland. She got to see
that's
them
cool.
from the sky.
That's really cool.
My son has seen this. I have the Northern Lights have shown up over and over again in places we just left the day after we left there. I've still never seen them. But it's not a big deal. It's not a big. I've met most of my bucket list items. I've had a very good run. And I tell you sincerely, if I were to die tomorrow, I'd be proud. I had a good run.
Well, that's good. That's
well, we hope that doesn't happen.
Or that's something a lot of people can't say.
You've had a good run. And also, I think I was muted when I said I've lost. Another reason to be envious of me, I guess, is that I've completely lost count of the number of times I've seen Northern Lights, because it's just, I live that far north. So it's
you live in that frozen, hellish hellscape that is, Canada.
You live in Nova Scotia.
I do now, but I used to live in northern Saskatchewan and northern Alberta. So yeah.
My wife came up with this idea that I loved at the time. It's no longer possible to do this, but she came up with the idea. She said, "Let's move to Vietnam." Why would I move to Vietnam? And she goes, "Well, let's move to the village that my family is from." And I wasn't down with that at all until I saw the pictures. So glass-walled skyscrapers in a jungle paradise on the beach. And when I looked at the pictures, I'm like, holy fucking shit, yes, I'll move there. She wanted to live 3 months there, and then 3 months in Halifax, and then 3 months in Vijayawada, India, and 3 months in Cancun, Mexico, and then 3 months. So she had planned like 3 years of 3 months in different locations around the world that would all be cheaper than where we're living right now. We can't do it anymore because we have like a fuck ton of pets.
Right.
And the reason we do that is because we have other family obligations. But I thought that's actually a wonderful idea that we could move to all these different places. And then I hear about how Americans penalize other people for wanting to move to where we live. And I realize how fucking bigoted we are.
All right.
We got a couple
they may
$20
think, well,
super
she
chats
should-
too.
Oh, we got a super chat. Hold on here. We got Michael Decino writes, enjoying the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And
for
we
that.
got Fred Harvey for the trip to Godzilla Park. Australian
There you
$20.
go.
I'll make sure Aron gets that.
$20 dues right there.
Dollar dues.
I don't have many bucket list items anymore, but if I end up in Japan at a Godzilla theme park, shit.
Amazing.
Using the climate idea as a plot tool, but it's used over and over and over again in movies. And of course, people hear that messaging from our culture, from the media, and so the idea gets reinforced as truth in so many of the minds of those who watch movies like this.
This is the exact
So
same
She
complaint.
says humans are the infection.
All right, so this is the exact same complaint as when flat earthers are like, look at all these movies that show Earth as a globe. Yeah, that's because it's just a thing that's true. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And even if you're right that it's not a thing that's true, it's a thing that everyone thinks is true, so it's what's in the movie. Right?
The
Like,
shitty
this is not
thing
an
is-
argument.
Have you ever argued with flat earthers?
Yeah.
It's so easy to prove that the Earth is really a sphere, and that everything they're saying about it is bullshit. But it's all about make believe. They want to pretend that it's people who don't understand anything who want to pretend that they know better than all the experts.
Oh yeah. This is the version of me for when I argued with Flat Earth Ozzy Roscoe. And my argument was, no, actually the Earth is flat, but Antarctica is the center, and the sun actually revolves around Antarctica. And the reason I did that is because he's from Australia, and this actual version of the flat Earth better matches what he actually sees in the real world. And he just kept on going. Thank you. And he just kept on. He kept on going on about how ridiculous this flat Earth model is, and my whole thing was like, why? Why is this ridiculous? Tell me why this flat Earth model is ridiculous in a way that doesn't make yours ridiculous. And he's like, well, you got the sun going the wrong way. Like, nope, it's coming up in the east and it's going to the west. It's going so that if you look up, it's going to be going clockwise, just like you see it in your sky from Australia, buddy. Everything here is a much closer to match to what you see living in Australia like you do. So yeah, that was, and then of course it was modern day debate. So James was like, all right, we're going to stop pretending you're a flat earther, Dapper. And I was like, all right, fine, I guess. He ruined my excellent debate strategy.
Too bad.
I know.
Although think about there is degree of
No, I was just gonna say the stars were making me a little motion sick, so I'm going back to my regular.
Truth in this, humans did wreck the world when God made a perfect world, and Adam sinned and wrecked the world. And we
Genesis
see
chapter 3, right?
Yeah, that's very early on in the Bible. And but in this one, she says the earth released a fever to fight the Titans.
Right.
And think about how inconsistent she is.
Right.
So we need to set them free. Wait, didn't the earth
Earth's
already do
doing
something
that.
to
Just get
set
out of the
something?
way.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Why are you trying to control it? right?
Exactly.
And again, I mean, if evolution were true, why would they care? Let it all
Okay,
burn.
hold on. Did they watch the movie? Because
Wait. I don't understand. If we're part of nature and we have a responsibility to humanity and we're part of a community where we need to have compassion for our family, friends, and fellows, and even for other species when we can, they're saying, why should we care? If we can't be the most important thing imaginable and we can't live for absolutely forever, then why should we give a fuck about anything else? These guys are pretending as if they're moral, not having any idea at all what morality even is.
And
No.
one of my questions is did they actually watch the movie? Because in the movie, right, Monarch has all of these Titans in little containment facilities where they've been monitoring them, and in some cases doing things like pumping them full of industrial amounts of sedatives to keep them suppressed. So they're like, well, why don't they just get out of the way? That is the point of the character that Vera Farmiga is playing. She has a way to get Monarch to get out of the way by awakening the Titans that should have been awakened anyway, according to the natural order of things in the movie. But the humans are the ones who are preventing that actively, which you see in like the opening sequence of the movie where they're in the containment facility for Mothra, And they're like, oh, why don't we just use more sedatives? And one of them's like, well, it's not working. We're trying. We're just keep using sedatives. And she's waking up anyway. So that's like the entire point of her character motivation, is that Monarch has been stopping this. And here they are like, well, why doesn't she just get out of the way? And you combine that with earlier, one of them had said, when I watched the clips in preparation for this, I don't think they watched the movie before they did this review of the movie.
It's possible.
And that really bugs me, just from how you properly do a movie review. You should watch the movie. There's a reason I watched the movie before I came on here today. It's because I want to know what the heck I'm talking about. And I don't think they did. I think they might have watched it once years ago when it came out in theaters. And then they just looked at the clips that they're going to be using in today's episode, and that's it. I don't think that they actually watched the movie. And that bothers me on like a professional level of like just how the basics of how you do a show, right? Watch the thing you're talking about.
They're
But
trying to.
it doesn't seem when they're advocating for their collection of favorite mythology, I'm not sure that they've read their own folklore.
I mean, given how bad some young Earth creationists are at the Bible, that wouldn't surprise me. My favorite example of young Earth creationists being really bad at the Bible is when Ken Hovind repeatedly says that the author of 1st and 2nd Timothy is Timothy, when even though they're almost certainly not written by Paul, they're at least say that they're addressed from Paul to Timothy.
That's hilarious.
They're letters to Timothy is the whole point of them.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then Timothy wrote 2 books of the Bible. And it's like, have you read them? They both start out as letters addressed to Timothy. I just don't get it. And like, that's the thing, is you don't have to be good at the Bible to be good at being a young Earth creationist, because the thing is, it's not about being honest. It's not even about taking the Bible seriously. Because here's another thing, right? If they were like, oh, we take the Bible as it's written, as it's described, we take Genesis 1 as a historical narrative. No, they don't. They don't believe that there's a dome over the earth that's the firmament that has windows in it that lets the flood water in from the cosmic ocean above the earth. They don't believe any of that. They don't think that the earth is set on pillars like the Bible describes. They don't think that the fountains of the great deep open up, allowing the cosmic ocean from underneath the flat earth in. They don't believe any of this stuff. They can't even be consistent with their own hermeneutical principles. And like, it's no wonder that they just get the Bible badly wrong, because they don't care about that either. What they actually care about is their traditional dogmas that they have inherited from a long line of theologians going back before them that are not directly drawn from the Bible in any meaningful way. And so when the Bible contradicts them, they don't care about that either. The Bible is just there as a convenient excuse for when it does agree with them, which is not even all the time.
Dapper, we're
Yes.
going to make a psychic communication. I'm pouring this one for you.
Well, thank you.
I don't know how you're going to drink it. Psychically, I guess.
psychically,
While we're on on that note, we're gonna from poor Claire. Thank you, Claire, regular visitor watcher. I was watching Pocahontas recently and realized that Aron looks exactly like Governor Radcliffe. You probably get that all the time, though.
There was a time when I used to get Jafar.
I can see that. Although I think the Governor Radcliffe is a closer similarity.
Fuck thee. I prefer when I look like Jafar.
That's right.
As far as characters go, no, Jafar is probably better. But I'm just saying, like, from a purely, like, who do you physically resemble more?
Yeah, no, Dapper. No, you're too young a man to not realize that some of us old people like to have our illusions about how we think we look.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I have realized for the
last, say that, but I'm like
20,
160 million years old, so
it's been at least 20 or 30 years that cameras and mirrors have been liars.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's like the flat earthers say, when your optical telescope shows you moons orbiting Saturn or Jupiter, like, that's just programmed in by NASA to your optical telescope.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah,
That's right.
sure. It's the same deal.
That's right. The makers of exercise equipment have been messing with my cameras for years. Yep.
It's a rule. It doesn't really matter. I mean, and then there's no way she can know the outcome of her actions. There's so much guesswork in what she's doing right there. And it is extremely inconsistent, for sure.
Let's face it.
It's like she's
humans
the
have done
bad guy.
good things. Humans have done bad things.
It's like she's the bad guy.
That's another thing. Like, did they watch the movie? She's the
Yeah,
bad guy.
she is,
You're
yeah.
not supposed to be rooting for her. Very early on in the movie, she pulls the trigger that releases that triggers the explosives that release Monster Zero, King Ghidorah, from his being trapped in ice. And that's when everyone realizes that she's the bad guy. They have a whole scene about it where like the Colonel lady and her husband or ex-husband, I guess, are back on the they're back on like Castle Bravo, their little base underwater, and they're like, I'm telling you, it was her who pulled the trigger. And like, you know, her former coworkers like, no, she would never do that. That's definitely not true. You must have seen something different.
Yeah.
And then her ex, I guess, husband comes up and says, no, I saw it. I was right next to her. She did it. And they're like, oh, she must be the bad guy. Yeah. Yeah. Then later she calls and has a villain monologue on
You know
video
what's important
chat.
about
that? You know what's important about that? I've loved, since I was a child, I've loved stories like this where you start out thinking you're the hero,
Mhm.
and at some point you realize you're the bad guy.
Oh yeah, it's. Do you think we might be the baddies?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's important to bear that in mind. You
Mhm.
might be the bad guy. I was taught an awful lot of stuff about the United States and about how wonderful we are. You know, how we would never negotiate with terrorists until we did.
Yeah.
You know, for example, and how we're all about truth, justice, and the American way. Until I realized that we're not about any of that shit. We're about the opposite of most of it. And the Star Wars prequels, horrible movies though they were, the one thing I appreciated about them was when they realized that this is all political spin.
Yeah.
We've actually been fucking shit up all the time because we've been following the political jingoism. That there's different aspects.
It all started with screwing up the tax rates on those trade routes.
But I've seen a number of really the things that I really love about science fiction is sometimes it can paint a picture like that. I mean,
yeah,
like Heinlein's original book that was adapted into a movie. The way that they did the movie adaptation, I thought, well, I was originally really insulted about how they seemed to be doing the opposite of what the original author had intended, but they actually did it kind of brilliantly with the movie. In that I thought that they were doing the opposite thing, but in really, I just had to watch it a little bit more in depth and really, no, they're making the same message. It's just that they do it with all of the Fox News kind of presentation. You have to be really paying attention to realize that, oh no, wait, what? Oh fuck, we really did this.
Yeah,
that was a really prescient line that George wrote, which was, "So this is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause."
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
You know, that was a brilliant line.
Or chants about hanging the vice president, or that's also one of the options.
Yeah. So that's what we need to be thinking about, that we might be the villains of our own story. And I was raised by people who were so ethnocentric. They were taught when we went to summer camp, cabin number 14 is the best cabin, and we would all sing a song about it. We're better than cabin number 8, right? And
even though there's no meaningful distinction.
Right. There's no, just because it's the one that you have makes it the better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the family that I was raised by is our high school is the best high school. Our town is the best town. Our state is the best state. Our religion is the base religion. Our race is the best race just because we were born into it. And I remember my father telling me once upon a time, I know that this is the exact opposite message that he meant to convey. He said, America's the best damn country there is, and I don't need to know about nowhere else.
Ah, yes.
He didn't realize what an admission that was.
Yeah. Also, I like the super chat. I do want to mention something about that.
My favorite Godzilla is Godzilla versus Charles Barkley.
Yeah, so that actually comes out of a series of Dr. Pepper commercials from the 80s, because when the first Millennium movie kicked off, it was released in the USA, again with Raymond Burr mostly reprising his role. And the weird thing is that a lot of the money that was paid for the that was used for the American reshoots and for distribution and whatnot was actually paid by Dr. Pepper on the condition that, one, there would be Dr. Pepper product placement, which there was a heck of a lot of in the American release, and also that they could use the Godzilla character, although they had to make their own suit, but in commercials. That's where you get things like the Surfing Godzilla, or the Godzilla drinking Dr. Pepper with Mrs. Godzilla, who's a made-up character. Well, I mean, they're both made up, but they made it specifically for the commercial. Or Godzilla dunking on Charles Barkley and things like that. That is all coming from that ad campaign that Dr. Pepper had in the wake of the first of the new series of Godzilla movies. It was the Heisei. I said Millennium. That was wrong. It was the Heisei movies. Sorry about that, because it was the 80s, not the 2000s, obviously, which is when the Millennium stuff starts. So.
But he's not wrong. That was a genius commercial. It was delicious.
Oh yeah. In fact, right now I kind of want a Dr. Pepper.
That's reality. So she talked about the mass extinction has already begun, which is classic eco-terrorist language
and alarmism, right? Yeah. And how many times have we?
Yeah, the bad guys are eco-terrorists. You figured it out, guys.
Yeah. Environmentalism is eco-terrorism. You know why? Because it means that Christians have a responsibility to the environment, and they're all about denying responsibility. You don't have to offer atonement for any of the ills that you've done. You can just pretend that your magic imaginary friend has forgiven you, so you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to help anybody in need. You can just literally wish upon a star that they'll get the help that they need somehow without you having to do a fucking thing, right? Christianity is all about denying responsibility, is pretending that you can just push everything off onto somebody else.
Heard that in the past. Well, within 20 years, within 10 years, and then
so you have like Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. These things are going to happen, and he shows this progression where you think, oh, this is going to happen by like within 10 years.
We should be here right now.
All right.
Florida should be gone.
This is something that a lot of anti-climate change types like to talk about, and it's very disingenuous, which is to say, hey, 20 years ago, there was this climate prediction that by this year, this thing would be the case. And it's not, therefore, we can't trust the climate predictions. But the problem is that what they always do is they cherry pick the worst case scenario where there are no new environmental policies put in place by any countries,
right? Exactly.
Where the use accelerates according to current trends and things like that, right? In those cases, but that isn't what actually happened. There were new environmental regulations put in place. There were climate deals worked out between various nations that were putting out these, greenhouse gases and whatnot. So what's actually happening is that one of the other predictions that you can usually find on the same chart that they're pulling their worst case scenario predictions from that they're complaining about, where you say, okay, if we do this, if we cut emissions by this much, or we only grow emissions by this much, then this will happen. And that happens to be the world we're living in. We're currently living in a world where many places around the world are hitting record high temperatures every year. I'm feeling it myself right now because the high today was 92 in November. Even in Tucson, that's unusual. That's not a typical thing, but it has been for the last couple of years. And so we're in one of the less severe cases, which is good. I don't want to be in the most severe case. We still got a lot of work to do. I think that the human race is still not, off the deep end when it comes to climate. There's no pulling it back. There's going to be more damage before it ever gets better. But you can't simply, you can, but it is deeply dishonest to simply pick the worst case scenario that climate scientists have predicted, pretend that nothing was done between then and now to help mitigate the worst possible case, and then say, see, it didn't happen. Yeah, that's the point of the prediction. It's actually kind of the same way that biblical prophecy is supposed to work, right?
Right.
When prophets in the Bible go on and talk about how, your whole city is going to be decimated and destroyed and everything, it's supposed to be a warning. Like, hey, shape up.
Right.
Or
if you do nothing. Yeah.
Right. If you do nothing, this bad thing will happen. The goal is to get you to do the thing, and then the bad thing doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you would think the people who like the Bible as much as they pretend to might notice that maybe they're doing the same thing as the people who the prophets are complaining about. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me taking the Bible more seriously than Answers in Genesis bothers to.
I think it's a good time for me to mention that the link to Dapper's channel and the link to AronRa's channel are in the description. So you absolutely, because the kind of stuff that they're giving you tonight, they do on their channel all the time. And if you are for some reason not subscribed to both of these gentlemen, this gentleman and this lizard, then you absolutely
excuse me, dinosaurs are not lizards, sir.
Yes,
I'm calling you a
they are
lizard.
not.
Oh my goodness! How could you? We've already had this discussion several times
I
about
know.
the differences.
That's the joke. Come
Oh
on.
my goodness! Look at those feet. Those
Paul.
are digitigrade.
Paul,
Yes.
I sincerely thank you for inviting me to this thing because I find Godzilla, my passion for Godzilla to be so interrelated to politics and science and culture is a weird way,
Mm.
but I think I've explained it through the course of this evening.
Yeah.
Where I see the connections. I am delighted, honestly, sincerely delighted that you brought me in to describe the correlations that I see this way. Thank you. Thank
You're
you for
very
having me
welcome. We can. Well, let's. I assume it seems like you guys still have a full head of steam, but we can wrap it up, or we can keep going.
I've always been a head full of steam.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Paul,
Well,
I think if you let us, we might go later than you're even okay with, because I know for you it's pretty late. So, do
yeah,
you
but
feel like you need to wrap it
don't-
up?
I don't sleep, so that's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, in
Keep
that
going.
case,
I
all right.
already told the story about the American Gladiators girls and how they turned me on. So I am beyond shame at this point.
All right. Well, I'm going to then insist that we keep listening to what these guys have to say. So.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay.
Ours predictions,
Or
at
we
least.
just heard one of our congresswomen not too long ago say we got 12 years left, and
Yeah.
I mean, they're always pushed far enough down the road so that it doesn't affect the next couple elections for them.
Hold on. So can
right?
we just jump onto this? Jesus said he would be back before some of his prophets had died. Some of them might be dead, but not all of them. But he would be back very soon under nobody's criteria is thousands of years from now. There are some of you standing here who will
Mhm.
not even taste of
Taste
death
death.
before they see the Son of Man returning in his clouds and the kingdom of power at the right hand of power. Yeah, so these guys are making up their own fucking rules to try to justify their bullshit that failed 1900 years ago.
Double standards.
And they're trying to make guesses within a humanistic framework, and they're assuming evolution is true. We're here by random accident. They're not taking into account the fact that this.
Assuming what we can fucking prove.
So-
Who the fuck is this asshole talking?
So this is
Get
Brian
me a
Osborne.
Get me a debate with Dickless here, who circumcised his brain out of him. Who the fuck is this guy? Let me have a full on debate with this Dickless weed. We'll show him.
So he's interestingly, he's one of the least qualified people at Answers in Genesis, and that is saying a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Goodness.
Get me the most qualified professional goddamn liar on the entire staff.
Well, you may not want. So Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, Dapper, but Brian was brought in because all his education is in education. So they brought him in to revamp their homeschool curriculum so that it could be sold legally to everyone around the country, to the extent that now Answers to Genesis has the biggest selling homeschool curriculum in America.
I believe that's the case. I will not say that that's definitely the case because I'm not currently going to go look it up, and I wouldn't want to say it definitively without that. But yeah,
he's their curriculum guy, regardless. Like he is.
Hi.
Yeah.
He basically is the guy who pushes this stuff to get into.
So this is
either
even know that
schools
you're
or
on camera,
homeschools.
do you?
So this is actually something that comes up a lot in creationist literature, this complaint about quote unquote assumptions. And usually what they're talking about is various things in a scientific study that the study itself does not attempt to justify, but simply accepts as part of the background information that they're
Sure.
going with.
Yeah.
And the problem is that in one sense, yes, that is an assumption, right? Like we assume when you're going to go build a bridge, right, that gravity is going to be roughly the nominal value of 9.82 or whatever meters per second squared as the force of gravity pulling on everything. Okay. But that's an assumption in the sense that it's a prior conclusion of previous research that we don't have to repeat, because part of the point of science is that we get to build on the conclusions of previous scientists that have gone unrefuted for long enough to become basically something that you can just take as fact. And so a lot of times creationists will complain about, well, they just assume radiometric decay rates. Well, okay, in this paper, that's true. This particular paper does assume those radiometric decay rates, but that's because of the hundreds and thousands of previous papers that have established not just the decay rate, but the underlying physics at the subatomic level that governs the decay rate that would have to change in order for the decay rate to vary significantly. And we don't have that kind of physics available to us. So it's only an assumption in that strict sense that this particular paper doesn't bother to repeat the entire history of science, because that's insane. No one has the time for that.
I've seen a number of comments from these people that I know I can immediately refute, like objectively, easily.
Mhm.
I would like to see a small handful of people who actually work with, in phylogenetics, in radiometric dating and so forth, to and with scriptural analysis and so forth, because I work with a lot of biblical scholars who know Koine Greek and ancient Hebrew and so forth. They can disprove every one of these arguments. These ass plants don't
That's a new
care
one.
what the truth is. They want to pretend what they want to pretend, and that's it. But I'm completely done with this, because this is undermining our country. This is destroying people's rights. This is causing a compromise. If I was in control of this country, my primary concern, if I had autocratic dictatorial powers, my primary interest would not be in my own glory or power. It would be in whether your mother can get her prescriptions, whether people can still maintain their businesses. Have I interrupted the flow of your practices or whatever? Have I made shit more difficult unnecessarily for you? But creationism wants to impede all fucking progress. So I want to have full-on debates with these people. Every one of these assholes who wants to argue against me, I'm down. I may not have expertise in all of these fields, but I can take on every one of these idiotic assholes who are presenting lies as fact for all just for propaganda. And let's just overturn this shit for what it is. I've been in the room. I didn't get a picture with him because I have absolutely no respect for a professional liar like Ken Ham, but I've been in the room with him. I've been feet away from him. I remember staring at him like this, going, "You won't even take a picture with me, you fucking dick." These people need to be called out. Yeah, he makes $20 million a year. How much do I make? I can't pay my fucking bills. I need all the help I can get. But these people who advocate for make-believe, tens of millions of dollars a year, just by telling people that you're the most important race there is. You're the reason the universe exists. 11 jillion galaxies were created just for you to make a stupid decision regarding two trees, not one, two trees, one of which was for eternal life, which means that if you had a choice between a tree of knowledge of good and evil and a tree of eternal life, that means you did not already have eternal life. But we're talking about people who don't think about logic, who don't have. Will you shut the fuck up? I'm turning a point. I don't need a boxer interrupting my argument. Shut the fuck up. Okay, thank you.
You're aware that the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has written for Answers in Genesis, right? I assume you know that.
I am. I'm working on my second. Shut up. My second issue with him. I did the first video with him. I did an interview with Andrew Seidel. I absolutely love Andrew Seidel. I'm so happy that I can work with somebody of his caliber. But the second video that I'm doing, that I'm working on right now, which will be. Will you shut up? I'm trying to sound important, and I can't because I have your loud ass. Shut the fuck up. But yeah, Mike Johnson, will you shut up? Let me finish the sentence. I don't care. No. Fucketh thee. Okay. Not a word, no word. No. No.
Paul, next time just invite the dog.
He
Our
is
dogs can
better
have a
than
play
most
date.
of the
That's right.
people.
Yep.
He is better, and I'm not kidding. I'm sincerely not kidding. He's better than most of the people I've debated in the last year.
Hey, he hasn't lied yet, so you know.
If I didn't have these earphones in, my dog would be singing along. So yeah.
Okay. So Mike Johnson has said an awful lot of incredibly stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
And the next video that I'm working on is shut up. Let me finish a goddamn sentence. We don't care about your fucking canoid opinion. Okay? Shut up.
Pretty though.
Look at that face.
Pretty though.
Isn't he hideous? I love you. Shut up. Okay. Mike Johnson has spewed an awful lot of ignorant bigotry, easily disproved. Everything he said. I'm going to try to ignore Mr. Asshole.
Good luck.
Can't stop farting out of his fucking face. And neither can Mike Johnson.
I was going to say, that's right in.
Similarity there.
The guy just spews ignorant, bigoted hatred ignorantly. Oh, I already said ignorant. I'm sorry. He has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Politically, historically, theologically, scientifically, no way. I've made one video with him, with Andrew Seidel, and the next one is, I'm not going to have any other experts on it but me. The next video on Mike Johnson is just me, and it's going to be talking about how he thinks that if we can't pretend to be the most important beings in the universe, then life doesn't have value?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Oh,
That there's no such thing as morality unless God is telling us that we're the most important beings in the universe? Really? That's a philosophical fucking failure. So I'm doing the best that I can. I think I'm going to probably have to bow out of this because my animals are
Okay.
interrupting everything I fucking say right now. Thank you so much for Paul Enns for bringing me on to discuss one of my favorite topics. I find Godzilla to be, it's not just a movie. There are so many important statements for different time periods that were made by the people that were making these different movies, when the different films were made. Important statements, political statements, environmental statements, and so forth. Thank you for
You're
having
very
me
welcome.
on.
That was my pleasure. Absolutely.
I
Thank
had
you
a
so
blast.
much. And yeah.
When they asked me, "Do you have any Godzilla memorabilia?" and I have a shrine. I have an absolute shrine to Godzilla over my head.
Love it. Love it.
But
we have one last super chat that was just a question to you, so I will let that get in here. So if AronRa is beyond shame, how much to put him in a tutu? I think you've probably been in a tutu before. I don't know.
I did go to a frat party wearing nothing but a yellow taffeta prom dress.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And I mean,
That's pretty
no
close.
underwear or anything, but I'm 60 some odd now. You have to picture me when I was 20, low 20s. When I show up in a yellow taffeta prom dress, it worked.
And like in terms of,
And you know what's funny?
being a
You know what's
tutu-
funny? Somebody showed up at that party. I'm sitting. I was in a frat house. Somebody lived in a basement, and I'm sitting in their basement apartment. I'm sitting in the sink Why? I don't know, because it was the only place to sit. But I'm yelling at, I'm wearing a yellow taffeta prom dress, and I had a serrated edge steak knife. And I was carving my initials into my knuckles.
Ouch.
While with a serrated edge steak knife, while wearing a yellow taffeta prom dress. And this guy comes in to announce to me that the girl I've been involved with for the last week or so was his girlfriend that hadn't told him that she was involved with me.
Ooh.
And I can't express to you how unimpressed I wasn't. You're going to pick a fight with a guy in a yellow prom dress with a serrated edge steak knife carving his initials into it? How about I just stamp my name into your fucking chest?
Oh man.
I have a deal for David Hercules though when it comes to tutus. Tell you what.
Can you imagine being challenged to a fight?
Oh yeah, no,
that's a wild one.
In a yellow taffeta prom dress going, you can't fucking beat me, but I will humiliate the fuck out of you before you go to the emergency room.
Yeah, like what's the up? There's no upside to that guy. Like, so what if he beat up the guy in the yellow taffeta? Like, yeah, that's stupid.
So, David Hercules, I'll tell you what. Come to my channel tomorrow at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern, and I will not only wear a human suit, but I will also put on a pink tutu.
I feel like the tutu is only shame, not because like there's anything wrong with wearing a tutu, but just that I wouldn't be able to pull it off as well as I hope that I'd be able to.
I don't think
really
I'm going to pull it off well, but I'm going to wear it. So, David Hercules, if you want to see one of the panel members in a human suit, because turns out there is an amount that will get me to wear a tutu, and we already got it. So
I'll do it on your channel. Well, thank you, Aron.
I don't know what
us.
to say about
you
him
so much.
Yeah, I'm 4 decades beyond where I would normally be modeling for, transgender kind of clothing. I played Frankenfurter for 4 years, but that was decades ago.
All right.
Oh, baby.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Aron. And and we've got a couple more super chats. Dapper, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Aron, Paul, who's this Dapper guy, some chump. Yes, check out his channel. That chump. And Red Fox, you might say Mike doesn't know fit about Shuck. Okay.
You know what's really nice about doing these shows from your own home like this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to drive home.
That's perfect.
Yeah, just walk to bed.
Because that might be dangerous at this point.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to, I think, Dapper, if that's okay with you, I think we're just going to end the stream. I have work to do as well. We didn't make it very far, but we talked about Godzilla and creationism, and that's all we wanted to do. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Paul.